Hey, what's up, creeps? Jay here, as usual. So, this week we're hitting you with another banked episode Michael and I did a few weeks ago with none other than Rex Sikes. Rex is an actor, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. He's a teacher, a podcaster, a mentalist. He lived in that fucking commune portrayed in the famous Netflix doc Wild Wild Country. I could literally go on and on. So just listen to this shit and peel a couple layers back on a super interesting dude. In other news, we only have a couple banked episodes left to put out, which is good. We want to be able to give more timely commentary on shit and think we have our workflow finally hammered out to the point that we can record and put out content the following day, if not the same day. That said, we're about to go on full lockdown here in Milwaukee, same as many of you are. So Michael and I are scrambling, trying to figure out a way to do listenable remote Corona casts with Brian Green, maybe, hoping to bring a little laughter and maybe confessional insight to all this madness that we're collectively dealing with. But in the meantime, look for Holy Clown Cinephiliacs episodes with myself and my brother and creative partner in crime, Chris. Those are going to be deep dive double feature film reviews in which each of us brings a selection to the table per episode. First one should be dropping any day now, in which we drunkenly spout off on Todd Phillips' Joker, which I have not seen yet, or had not seen yet, and Louis C.K.'s Me Too Murked I Love You Daddy, which you can't really get your hands on legally, but I encourage you to seek it out. All right, so keep your eyes peeled for a gang of those, in addition to our regularly scheduled programming, if we figure out how to get that back on track during lockdown. And finally, I just want to say, I sincerely hope you're all safe and sound, all 7 of you who listen to this shit, and you're staying home as much as possible. I mean, I know we say a lot of perverse, dastardly shit on this podcast, but hopefully it's apparent, or at least understood or assumed, that we're both good people who really want nothing but the best for everyone out there in the trenches. So let's flatten the curve and give those brains toiling over microscopes time to nail a vaccine for this fucking thing so we can all get back to some semblance of normal, whatever that is. One last thing. Apparently, I've replaced my penchant for saying "and shit" at the end of every other sentence to using "etc." as a placeholder for that. So if you want to do a drinking game while you're stuck in the house, do a shot every time I say "etc." You'll be fucking hammered 20 minutes in and probably dead and won't have to worry about coronavirus anymore by the end of this shit. Okay, without further ado, we hope you enjoy episode number 8 of the Holy Clowns podcast with myself, Michael Gall, and our guest Rex Sikes, which we're calling Punches Are Hugs.
Paper and pencil is about all I can manage.
It's a pain in the ass having to wear all those hats. It'd be nice to have a real podcast like Joe Rogan has, that young Jamie guy who just does all that shit.
I don't edit anymore. I can't even edit an iMovie anymore. I just do nothing. It's amazing. I'm like technically challenged.
Puppet shows. That's what we need to bring back.
We've discussed this many times.
Crazy.
Puppet shows are the way to go.
Marionettes would drive me nuts.
Oh my God.
But a hand up the puppet I could do.
Yeah, all day long.
And night.
So it's Rex Sikes, everybody. Rex,
yes.
Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself. Who are you? Justify yourself.
Define yourself as a man.
Yeah, really. I'm a dad. I love being a dad. I'm been accused of being a human at times.
That's
and my passions have been spiritual enlightenment and movie making, acting, and all things film-wise, and all things spiritual and enlightening, and mystics of the East and the old mystics of the West. So
sweet. I like how you led with dad. Like, who does that? That's awesome.
Because I'm a dad. My kids are gifts in the world, and hopefully they outlive me and contribute in whatever way they contribute, but they contribute to me in an incredible way, just by their presence, if nothing else. So love being a dad, love having kids.
So what you're saying is if you didn't have kids, you'd be a complete dirtbag.
I am a complete dirtbag. And I turned to my dad before he died and I said, if I have accomplished anything in my life, which I haven't, but had I accomplished anything in my life, the best accomplishment I ever had, the best decisions I ever made was having children. So you can take everything and trash anything I've done, but keep the kids.
Awesome. Well, we mostly know you as actor, filmmaker, blogger, mentalist.
Right.
What else?
Podcaster. Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else looming on the horizon? There's bound to be, but you got it. And I've been doing it. I've been in the Screen Actors Guild since I was about 18 years old.
Which was 2,000 years ago.
2,000 years ago. I'm ancient, but I've been acting since I was about 4. My parents put me in dancing classes, acrobatic classes, when I was 2 or 3, and the first thing I ever did was I was the rowdy kid in the Nutcracker Suite, and it was just an amateur production, but acrobatics and acting and doing stage magic and mind reading and mentalism and making movies with 8mm, Super 8mm, 16mm, and then graduated to film and television. So
that's what you're doing as a kid, was making films and everything.
Yeah,
Cool.
We blew a lot of stuff up and made bad comedies because I loved the Marx Brothers. I transcribed all the Marx Brothers movies, and my favorite comics were a couple of guys that now people know more of, but didn't for decades. Was Burt Wheeler and Robert Woolsey, and
I have to check them out more. I've heard the names, but I've never delved in.
But they were the reason why nobody knew about them until like AMC and Turner Classic Movies was because they were pre-code most of what they did, so they didn't get reruns. In the 60s and in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, they started rerunning their stuff. But prior to that, a lot of the people like the Three Stooges and Marx Brothers, stuff like that, Laurel and Hardy, most of their careers were made in television.
Crazy.
They may have been big stars like Burt Wheeler and Robert Woolsey actually financed RKO as stars, but nobody ever heard of them. The Marx Brothers apparently were popular, but not that popular until television. And then everybody started to love the Marx Brothers because they could see their movies. Huh. Same with the Three Stooges. So
interesting.
TV has had an impact on
TV and movies have always had a strange, evolving relationship. Whereas when we were kids, movies were the gold standard. TV was slumming it, essentially, But now we're in the golden age of television, obviously, where, hell, that's kind of the brass ring for a lot of creators. They're not even into movies anymore, especially as the movie business is contracted and it's just sequels and franchises and intellectual property. TV's where it's at for creators.
Absolutely. I mean, I have for at least the past 10 years encouraged everybody to stop making one-offs and just do series whenever you can. Because
the only problem with that, we were talking about this, I was saying even yesterday as a viewer that I'm kind of turning back to movies just because it's like dating. You can watch it and you're done with it versus having to commit to some TV show. And
I just binge watched Deadwood.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I just absolutely adored it. I couldn't get into it when everybody was watching it, and I'd go to people's houses and they watched Deadwood and I'm like, whatever. But I decided I was going to sit and watch it, and it's so dense. And by that I mean thick, not stupid, but dense of material that this hour goes by. Seems like it takes forever, and you're emotionally drained by the time it's all over. And then there's 12 episodes, so there's 36 hours of television, and it's like, holy crap, And then I watched the movie. In fact, I just watched the movie this morning.
Still have not watched the movie. Love the series. Still haven't watched the movie. I don't watch shit with a 6-year-old. I barely watch anything. We've discussed this ad nauseum too. But it's interesting. Back in the day, there was always the critique of movies that the book is better. But that's because you're taking a novel and trying to contract it into 2 hours of audio-visual presentation. So now it's like short story equate to movie. You take a movie like Eric Heiser, a guy I know, he wrote that movie Arrival. It's from a short story. So many great short stories you could break out into a movie because it is this single distilled thing, usually with a beginning, middle, end, etc. Whereas novels, now the template will be to adapt it to a TV series or a mini series. But
The issue that, I mean, the couple of things that you raise. One is, I don't have enough time in the day to watch all of the series I would like to
For
watch,
sure.
and I am backlogged with everything I want to see. And I do the Screen Actors Guild Awards every year, and so they send out all the series and they send out all the movies that are for SAG
screeners.
And I mean, I had never watched Big Little Lies. Watched it, loved it. Went, oh crap! It's only it's a limited series. I didn't know that. But I started watching all these series, and I'm just like, so it's wonderful, but I had no life during the time trying to get this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if I had 12 movies to watch as opposed to 12 series to watch, it would be a different.
So you vote for the SAG Awards?
Occasionally, yeah, I try to.
Who did you vote for Best Actor in a Film this year?
In SAG, I don't remember who it was. I mean, the difference between, I mean, they're not necessarily the same people with the Academy. Let me think about that. I think I voted Leonardo.
Can't go wrong with that. He fucking killed it.
He killed it.
I think it was his best performance. The layers of it, where he plays a guy with a lot of self-doubt, insecurity issues, even though he's this good-looking leading man, and then he wants to be the hero, but he gets hired to play the black hat in this show. So you see this guy who wants to be a good guy playing the bad guy fucking brilliantly. Like when he plays the bad guy, it's convincing. It's good. Yet then it's like cut, and he's back to the guy who's in his trailer freaking out because he thinks he fucked up the take and everything. It's great, dude.
And Joaquin was wonderful. He was marvelous. But the difference between the two performances for me are that people love to play the bad guy because it's so rich, and you can go over the top, and you can do that, and he did it in a liberated, controlled way where he's over the top, but not in a ridiculous sense. He's exaggerated as a character, whereas Leonardo just had so much subtlety to everything. I mean, there was he didn't ever have to really go large, and yet I was compelled to watch him and riveted to what he was doing. And it's unlike him. I mean,
you're going to have to watch a Tarantino movie, dude.
You
have to yet watch a Tarantino? You've never watched a Tarantino?
I have, and I can't stand Tarantino.
Yeah.
I can't
he talks nicely about you.
Yeah, I know he does. He owes me $9.
Yeah, no, he likes you a lot.
I dragged him to Django when it was at the Avalon, and
I
liked it.
I loved it. I loved Django.
Right.
I can deal with Pulp Fiction.
I think if you forget Tarantino made it, you'll like any movie of his.
I can deal with Pulp Fiction, but I, honest to God, just roll my eyes when people talk about how brilliant it is, and it's not.
I like Quentin Tarantino.
I love that you hate him, by the way.
I can't stand him as a writer. I can't.
Somebody's got to hate all the gods. Twilight of the Idols, right?
Every character sounds exactly like Quentin Tarantino. He doesn't know how to write dialogue.
Well,
direct it.
What I said about the last one, which was the last one, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was like Inglourious Bastards. I mean, kind of similar. And what is it?
In that it had the revisionist history aspect,
right? And the Hateful Eight was Reservoir Dogs. I mean, it's just a different location for the same kind of thing. People inside of it.
I mean, a lot of great genre directors, though. Like you say, Peckinpah made several westerns or whatever.
God.
But I don't know.
I knew
the critiques levied against Tarantino. It's kind of like he's fucking annoying, so people don't like him, and then they start coming up with the reasons they don't like him. Which I'm not going to say you're not justified in saying his dialogue, his affected dialogue, because it's certainly affected.
Yeah.
People don't talk like that. It's the cinema of cool, If you buy into that, it's well done, expertly done. There's so many people who do what he does poorly, You see the Boondock Saints and the Lucky Number Slevins and those kinds of movies that come along that are trying to do what he does, but it's never as good,
Well, I think he has his own voice, whether you appreciate it or not. He's got his own style. He's got his own way of doing what interests him. I don't know that I'm not a fan. Like I love everything he does, and therefore,
Right.
he's the top of everything. But I think he has. He and Rodriguez, kind of came from the same venue, the same vein,
Just that 90s auteur.
Yeah,
Linklater.
Yeah.
Different though. He doesn't do genre like they do, but.
Well, I mean, a friend of mine, Ken, texted me when Once Upon a Time came out, and he said, "Oh my God, you got to see it. It's brilliant. We lived it. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, just go watch it. And it was true. It was part of a time when we were growing up in Hollywood, a little bit before me, with the Manson thing. I mean, I was younger at the time, but
were you sad you missed that boat? Like you could have been in the crew if you were out there in time.
I could tell you a story
you got
about.
Cult stories,
I could tell
right?
you. I lived blocks from the LaBianca home in Los Feliz, and I would take people. Anybody who would come to Hollywood, I'd drive them up the street up at Waverly and go, "Hey, that's the LaBianca home." And they go, "Who?" I go, "Well, the Manson murders the night after the killing. This is where they," and it's alleged that the garage. We had separate garages in the apartment complex that I lived in. It's alleged by the manager at that time that the Manson gang, unbeknownst to them that it was a Manson gang, was stealing cars and dismantling them within these garages. So when they found it, they said, "We're calling the cops," which you should never tell to a criminal. We're calling the cops.
Right. No.
So when the murders happened, again, it's alleged that some of the bloody clothing was stuffed in the garbage cans behind the fence of these garages, and that the manager then suspected that they were actually looking for her in terms of retaliation and went to the wrong house. I don't know if any of that's true, but that's the story that I knew the manager of the building, so this was the story, from when I moved in, and I moved into that apartment in, I think, 75 from Columbia Studios. I was living in Columbia Studios, and I moved into this apartment in 75.
Must have been fucking awesome roaming around Hollywood back in those days.
Well, that's why kids said, we lived this. It was no cell phones is the best thing that ever happened. People don't get this. I lived in Hollywood and had to actually get off the freeway, put a nickel, dime, or quarter, depending on what year it was, or dime or quarter in the phone, and call my agent or call my answering machine or whatever, in order to, connect with somebody. I mean, you used to call places, not people. You call and go, "So and so there."
Nope, he's not here.
I prefer that.
Me too.
Because if you're not answering, you're not picking up your phone. That's pissing me off. But if you're not there, what can I do about it?
Right. I loved the aspect that you could get lost for a while.
Yeah.
You could go off the grid, whatever. Back in the day, you didn't answer your phone. Sorry, I wasn't home. You had that excuse. Now, you got no excuse.
When I first got here, or around the time I was married or dating at the time, I went to Doctor's Park.
Uh-huh.
And it was one of these like Wall Street phones, these bag phones. They're like this big. And I was going to leave it in the car. I thought, I should take it with me. And I carried it with me down to the water. And I got down to the water and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And the phone rang. And it was my then fiance or wife or what, at the time.
Little did you know that
going,
was the
you need
rest
to come
of your
back.
life.
And I was like, I've never taken a phone with me ever again.
I hate it.
But we were in Hollywood. This is how ridiculous it is. We were in Hollywood, and they would go, "Someday you'll be able to receive faxes at the beach." And I go, "I'm at the beach. Why do I want to get a fax?"
Right.
I'm trying to get the fuck away.
And yet now this is everybody's life. They love it.
Like we should be working less days a week, not finding ways to work while we're at the beach.
I think that there's a certain amount of technology that just makes everything more busy. Check your email, dump your email, check your spam, get rid of the promotions, get rid of this, do that, and it just
you become like a project manager of your own life.
And I believe in conspiracy theory that it's all designed to screw you so you lose your power, you're too distracted, you won't vote, you don't know what's going on.
Interesting.
And that technology is dumbing us down like in an incredible way.
Oh, it's making us incapable of doing anything. I at my business I have like 15 millennials and Gen Zs working for me.
Right.
And not a single one of these people can do anything. Like they don't know stuff, but they know everything. Like you have every piece of information in your phone. So that means you don't have to ever learn anything. Right. All you have to know how to do is type, and you have everything you need. And it's terrifying because if that goes away, they'll wither and die.
Oh, and this is science, that your brain, your thinking cap, the neocortex of your brain is actually wired to your fingertips, or your fingertips are wired to your brain. So when you write cursive or even do, printing, you're making infinitesimal movements varied movements that correspond with the brain. So you're
brain karate.
You're exercising your brain. When you type, you make 8 repetitive movements. They're the same no matter what it is. When you use an iPad or any of these things, you use your thumbs.
And worse, I type like a velociraptor with 3 fingers. So
yeah, well, I do.
Explains why I'm so fucking dumb.
But the point being is, as fewer people write, the dumber they get. They don't work out their brains the way they used to. It's kind of like the people who stay cogent into late in life are violinists and pianists and people who use fine motor muscles. Arnold Schwarzenegger's lucky, but it's not the big muscles that they may determine some of your health, but they're not the ones that are really important.
There's a direct correlation between our brain size and having this opposable thumb.
Exactly, and our digits, right. So, but you're right. I don't know any. I used to know every phone number, and I kept all my appointments in my head when I lived in Hollywood. And now it's all in my phone, and I put everything in my phone, and so I don't even know what I'm doing.
Nobody knows anybody's phone number. I get terrified. I'm terrified of, like, let's say I get pulled over, I get arrested for something, and
Coke, probably
they take my phone.
Date rape, maybe.
And I can't make my one call because I don't know anybody's fucking phone number.
You call 411.
Hey, officer, can I have my phone for a couple of minutes? I need to look up a number of how do you make your phone call if you get arrested?
That just happened to somebody close to me, where they got arrested, and they said, "Can I make a phone call?" And they go, "Do you know the number?" And they went, "No." They go, "Well, too bad. Your phone is confiscated," and they could not call. I'm like, "Well, why didn't you call me?" They go, "I couldn't."
Don't know your number.
Speaking of phones, is mine on the floor?
Oh, yeah.
Don't you freak out when you don't have it around you, when you don't know where it is?
Thank you. No, I truly do, because and especially since I said I'm a dad, it's like, oh my God,
you're expecting a call.
My kids can't reach me. It's a huge fear of everything.
But yeah, why should anybody know a phone number when everyone has Ziggy from Quantum Leap in their fucking hand now?
Well, but again, this goes back to my conspiracy theory. If all they have to do is I do not like streaming. I do not like. I think Apple, Disney, and McDonald's are that evil trifecta, and the reason for that is Apple. Well, let's start with McDonald's. McDonald's grabs them when they're as young as possible and gives them a toy.
Cradle to grave marketing.
Exactly. Totally. So Disney used to be the every 7 years we will recycle.
Now it's a Disney toy.
Well, and now it's a Disney
with
show,
an app.
But also, when the 27 programming came out, suddenly all the Disney kids were like, "Yeah, adults are stupid," and which is the Disney or Nick or whatever. And Apple wants to own everything and not give you anything and have it be licensed, so that if they decide they want to turn it off or change it, they can, and you have nothing tangible after that. So I like DVDs. And then they took, it's like floppy disks. They took away the floppy disk. They put in a disk drive. You got DVDs or CDs, and they took that out of their computer. Then they take their headphone jacks away. They keep taking stuff away from you. And I want, and then they go, well, if you want to watch a DVD, get a DVD player. The reason I got a computer was so that I didn't have to have all these other products.
Yeah, they pull the drive out. So now you need an external disk drive for your computer.
So this is Rex on a rant.
But also, you lose so much more. You lose all the bonus materials and shit that come with the DVD, the commentary tracks. Like we're talking about when we release Cactus Jack finally, we're going to do a commentary track episode on this podcast.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the way to circumvent this shit in the future,
Absolutely, and make it somehow inextricably.
Or you could use a YouTube channel. Like if you put out a streaming movie, put out a small YouTube channel with it that has all the ancillary stuff that would have been on a DVD or something. But it just disappears. So then we're just less rich.
So the world's going to hell in a handbasket, but there's something you can do about it. I mean, that's my message.
Yeah.
Positive thoughts from Rex Sikes.
Positive thoughts from Rex. Well, and that is true.
So are you straight up like what do they call it? What is the power of positive thought? What's the secret?
Yeah, or law of attraction. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it this way, and people just don't understand law of attraction. They think it's sitting in a chair and wishing or hoping, and what that brings you is a lot of wishing and hoping. What the secret or the law of attraction is really about is if you think about gravity attracts, gravity pulls. It's never doing repelling. It's always doing pulling. So the point is, is what are you pulling towards you? If you're filled with negativity, you're going to create more negativity. If you're filled with positivity, you create more positivity. It's the same way as, but here's the thing. Your thoughts lead to your feelings. And when I actually learned this in acting school, is thought precedes action. So you as an actor, you have to think, who's outside the door, and you go to the door to check. That's what impels you to go over and look out the door. You don't just do it randomly because there's, it's thought that leads you to the action. So thinking leads to your feelings. And if you think a negative thought, you feel bad. And then if you feel bad, you think another negative thought. So it tends to loop around, and you can spiral down real fast. Mm-hmm. If you think a positive thought and you feel good, you think, oh, I can do anything, and you feel powerful, then that leads to powerful feelings, and then that leads to more positive or powerful thoughts. And so that loops, and you can spiral up. But both thoughts, feelings lead to actions. You either feel like doing something or you feel like not doing anything. And if you feel like doing things and you're positive and you're feeling right, then you're more bound to take those steps and actions that will lead you to create the kinds of circumstances and events and go out and connect with the kind of people who can help you create whatever it is you want. And there's an attraction in that. If you're happy and healthy and whole, people can respond to that like birds of a feather flock together. And that's why people say when it rains, it pours, because you get more of the same. So if your primary mission is to live a wonderful life and you're happy and you're positive and you're feeling good and you're saying, I can do this, and you're not stopped. Like Henry Ford said, I never let what I can't do interfere with what I can do. Because I'm too busy doing what I want to be doing. So
is the first step of this process not mastering some form of mindfulness where you can stop having a negative reaction? Because we're inundated with negativity, not just in the media, but I mean, everywhere. You go outside in Wisconsin the wrong time of year, the air wants you dead. Right. Like everything's negative. Nature's out to get you, hunger, disease, everything. So the world is full of misery.
Yeah.
So to trick yourself, what you're talking about is almost a trick. Like, I think someone who is an actor like you might be more predisposed to doing this a lot easier or having that mindfulness, but you got to sort of trick yourself into not having that immediate negative reaction to negative stimuli, but instead then start telling yourself this positive narrative about this negative shit.
Yeah. Well, boy, I mean, we've opened up a boatload here because there's so many different ways to address this, but you're absolutely right on.
Which we've addressed too, that mindfulness is not my strong suit, as I destroy 3 double cheeseburgers and then look at the remains like a werewolf who woke up and killed 3 people.
The thing, I think the thing that has harmed us more than anything else, and because this is part of what I've done for 40, 50 years, both as a personal study and professionally, is if you look at the field of psychology, we went from having psychology be a tool for empowering you to a tool for making you a hopeless, helpless victim who needs coddling and understanding, and it's not your fault. And, and on the one hand, that's wonderful because you shouldn't blame a victim. Right. You should say, you know what? Had circumstances be different, maybe you could be different. That's great. But on the other hand, you have a choice, and most people don't know that they have choice anymore. And that is, you either live as a champion or you live as a loser. You either live as a victor or you live as a victim. And the difference is which you decide to do, and whichever decision you make. If you say, for example, why am I such an idiot? Which is what a lot of people do. How come nothing ever works out for me? Which is what a lot of people say.
Because you're a dumb loser.
Well, exactly. Your brain will come back. Your brain works by association, and it works to answer the questions you pose. So if you say I'm worthless, then you're affirming, not positively, but you are negatively affirming a worthless mindset or worthless value to yourself. So what you think and what you do is based on all of this stuff. And when you consider this, and this is what most people miss. If tomorrow you say, I'm going to think positive, and you go, I can do it. I can do anything. I can make an extra $100 a week, or I can make $1 million this year. Or I can find the love of my life. And in yourself, you're going, that's bullshit. It's because if tomorrow you wanted to juggle, you would have to start tossing the balls up in the air, and you would drop them, and you would continue to drop them. And if you give up, you'll never juggle. But if you keep,
it's not a switch you flip; it's a hill you climb.
But if you keep juggling and you keep juggling, you eventually get better at it. It's just like batting in baseball. You never become a perfect batter, but you increase your batting average. So if a person says, "Well, I tried positive thinking and I can't get it to work," it's because you have inertia you have to overcome. Because your brain is conditioned to go, why does this suck? How come I'm such a loser? That's what you do most often. And what you do most often is what you've practiced and what you've rehearsed and what you're good at. As an actor, we know this because what we do is we study our lines, we memorize our lines, we hit our marks, we find our lights, we deliver this so that on opening night or when the camera is rolling, it looks like it's the first time we've ever done it. But it's studied and it's rehearsed and it's practiced and it's methodical and it's done for 6 weeks or for however long until you get it. And the same thing is true with positive thinking or creating a positive life. You do it repeatedly, consistently for long enough until it becomes a reliable automatic habit. And when it becomes that automatic, reliable habit, that's when it gets easier. And it's about momentum. If you're standing at the top of a hill with an automobile and you're a foot away from the car in the front of it and the brakes give out, you can put your hand out and stop the car because it has no momentum. And a body at rest tends to stay at rest, right? But if you're 20 feet down and the car brakes give out, you'd have to jump out of the way because the gravity and momentum would pick up the speed of the car. So if you can catch things in the beginning, this is where mindfulness.
And it's hard because most of the people hearing this are grown adults. It's like, can we still instill this in kids in those developmental years? Then their entire life will be so much easier. Yeah,
you can, but there's a concerted effort not to do it because what they're raising is not good people to think for themselves and be their own entrepreneurs and have successful lives. They're developing people to be citizens and sheep to follow the rules and to live paycheck to paycheck and to moan and complain and because if we're serfs living on the side of a hill of the castle is the but you have to claim it back. You have to say, okay, this is how I've lived up till now, and teach your children and teach yourself, because there's plenty of adults who, even though they're adults, they don't know how to do this. And well, I've tried it. And you go, how long? And I go, well, I tried it for 6 months.
The thing is, most people, myself included, don't have the discipline.
True.
You need these prerequisites to even be able to do it long enough and fail at it enough to then get good at it.
Well, you have to make a decision. You have to say, I want this more than anything else. You have to decide that this is important to you. You have to say.
That's why I was saying we need to bring back fat shaming. If more people who loved me shamed me, I'd be in better shape. But they're all like, we love you anyway. I'm like, all right, fucking.
You know what? When Brian Greene calls me fat, you know what I do?
Eat.
Yeah. It doesn't shame me. It makes me hungry.
There you go.
It does.
Well, the other way to think about it is there's two ways to change. One is through catastrophe, in which a lot of people change.
Right.
They either go, I'm never going to do that again, and they learn to live differently, or I've been living my life for myself, I need to live for others, or I've been living my life for others, I need to live for myself, and they change nearly overnight because of the power of that decision. The other way is through conditioning. If you wanted to have the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger, not at home in a jar, but if you wanted to have your body look like his body, then what you would do is you would realize that you have to undertake a discipline of exercise, eating right, sleeping right, in order to condition your bodies. And you may never
There's
have...
no catastrophe. I can't get hit by a meteor and be Arnold. Come on, man.
Yeah, you might.
You gotta work at this shit?
Yeah, you could. But no, so it's systematic, but it's just like,
right.
How do you eat an elephant? You do it bite by bite. You do it little bit by little bit. If you bite off too much, you get, disappointed. But if you do little bits... But my thing is just always structure it so that you win. If you said, I'm going to clean my house this weekend, I don't want to clean my whole house this weekend. But if I go, I'll straighten my desk drawer. I can put my pens in a thing.
Small battles instead of making it
exactly. And you just do tiny little things. Ultimately, you start feeling better about the tiny little things you do. And those are little mini wins. And the more wins you collect, the more you feel like a winner. And the more you feel like a winner, the more you win, because winners win.
You're sounding kind of alt-right here, Jordan Peterson.
I'm tired of all the winning.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what about delusion?
Win.
Where's delusion falling into this? Because we all know losers who think they're kicking ass at everything.
Well, but this is
having positive thinking, but reality's not reflecting.
Well, but this is what I said. Well, better to think positive and have no results than to think crappy and have crappy results. But the thing is that it's not about hoping, it's not about wishing, it's not about deluding. It's about having thoughts, having the right feelings, taking the right actions to get the results that you want. So it's about systematizing your behaviors, not just going, whatever, and hoping that it happens. You know, it's not throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. It's taking control of your life as opposed to living it haphazardly. You either live with purpose or you live by default.
Are you a religious dude at all?
In what sense?
Well, I'm just thinking, do you think there's an omnipotent God who's intervening in lives, and do you pray to him, et cetera?
I don't know. I don't pray to him. I am God.
Or she.
I am God.
A Satanist. All right.
No. What I think.
Anti-LaVey shit.
Yeah,
you are Hollywood, dude.
Yeah, no, yeah, but no, no, but I think of it that way. I think if God is omniscient, and God is omnipotent, and God is omnipresent, then there's nowhere that isn't God. So then I am God too. So if it's a consciousness that's an intelligence of any kind, then I am that as well. And so is the table, and so is the air.
Positive thinking is a form of prayer.
And what?
So the positive thinking, et cetera, is a form of prayer.
And so is negative thinking.
I'm just thinking of the people who thoughts and prayers. Let's pray to. There's a passivity to prayer, whereas you're not trying to project a future that you then actively work towards.
Right. You take no responsibility for anything if you pray. I'm going to pray on this and come up with a decision.
Well,
That means you don't want to take responsibility for whatever fucking decision you make.
Well, you have a valid point. And at the same time, I would say, if I'm going to say, and I've never used those words that way, but if I said, I'm going to pray on this and come up with a decision, what I'm saying is, I'm thinking about it till later versus help me do this. It's not in my power kind of thing where we're begging and pleading and controlling and trying to get circumstances to change by asking or promising or bargaining or doing something along those lines, which is what prayer seems to have become.
Right, but a person who looks at the world the way you do, where it's you,
right?
You are the God in your life.
Participant.
Right.
But
the people who would be inclined to say, I'm just going to pray on this, and I'll let you know tomorrow.
Or
those are
just
Christians who believe they're praying to
God's plan,
Daddy in the sky, and don't want to take responsibility for whatever comes next.
Well, no, and I don't disagree with that. And I have for decades, and it pisses people off because I say I own LA, and then people get really mad. I go, it's my town. And my friends will go, how come you drive through LA and don't get stuck in traffic? I go, because I don't care. If I'm stuck in traffic, there's no place better to be.
It only feels like you're stuck in traffic if you're banging your head.
Well, right. I mean, in other words, if I'm driving down PCH, right, and I'm stuck at the beach in standstill traffic, I'm at the beach, for crying out loud. You know,
man, if you're happy in LA traffic, it is your town.
It is my town, and I've made it from Zuma to Norms on La Cienega in under an hour. And my friends are like, during rush hour traffic, they go, "How do you do that?" And they get really mad at me, and I go, because this is my town, and and if I own it, and then they get mad because, well, what makes you think you own it? I go, look, I own the world, and this is where I came into my power. I go, I own this planet, and this world is mine. I share it with other co-owners, but it's my planet, so I want it to be the best it can be. I want me to be the best I can be. I want to have the best life I can. I want to have the best life for my children and for you and for each and every person I meet. It's not about I own it and you don't. I'm not the castle and you're on the hillside. It's the difference is that we're all God. We're all consciousness. And whether there's an ultimately a being or not a being, or whether we're a flea on the back of some dog turd somewhere in the universe, I don't know. But, this sentient consciousness that is here temporarily and speaking as we all are talking, there's something to it. And I just decided, you know what? I want it to be a party. I want it to be fun. I don't want it to. And I haven't always lived this way, boy. I mean, I've had, and even now I have things happen that people go, well, if you're so good with the law of attraction, why did that happen? I go, because it did. It's like, think of this. Before humans were on the planet, the plates shifted, the volcanoes came, the mountains came, the winds came, the ice age happened, all this stuff. And nobody said, wow, this is a crappy day.
Right.
Humans bring judgment to stuff.
Yeah,
so we evaluate. So if you're certain,
homocentric.
Yeah, and ethnocentric and chronocentric and egocentric, the whole thing. So
gendercentric for sure.
Yeah. So the point is good things happen to people. Bad things happen to good people. What happens, and then it's what.
That is kind of in line with the God's plan thing. That's what I mean. But you're not.
Well, it's not a predestined
remaining
thing.
Passive though, because that's what a lot of people are just like, whatever. Like Christianity, you could say what you were saying about it. It's that they don't want to have to take responsibility or whatever. But some things are hard. Like I know a lot of fighters, and a lot of fighters are devout Christians,
Right.
and that helps them deal with a loss,
Right,
or
sure.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But then at the same time, it's funny that the guy who scores a touchdown or loses a football game, does that mean God wanted you to lose?
Yeah.
It's like they're kind of saying that he did because he's testing me.
That's what I mean. Like if you break down all the different, I don't know that I necessarily want to get into saying why Christians are ridiculous, but or any religion type
Especially
thing.
as we just talk about how many dudes who can kick your ass are Christian.
But that's because they prayed. They prayed for the ability to beat up the fat little old guy.
No, and that's what I'm saying too, is give yourself some credit. Because it is a way to be mock humble at times too.
Right.
I want to thank God for this victory. You're essentially saying, I want to thank God for making me so awesome. But thank yourself for the hard fucking work you put in. That's what I'm saying. The passivity of prayer, or you know what I mean? It's just,
it's all just disconnecting yourself and disassociating yourself from what's really happening in the world. I feel like people who are Christian or Muslim or any of the there's a guy in charge of everything religions are it comes from a place of, first of all, not wanting to take responsibility for anything, and secondly, not wanting to feel insignificant. If you have a direct line to the guy who created everything, how fucking important are you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, people can't deal with the fact that when we die, right. People can't deal with the fact that when we die, we decompose like a squirrel on the side of the road, and that's the end of your story. And what matters is what you left behind in this world. You leave a legacy in this world. There is no payment fucking afterward. You don't deny yourself things because your angry daddy in the sky told you to.
I think it is a lot egocentric, but a lot of it is also that people want to think the loved ones they lost are still around in some presence.
And that's a wonderful, comforting thing.
But it's comforting. It doesn't mean there's any basis in reality for it.
They left their legacy in you.
Right. I agree with that.
Heaven is sweet. That's just a really sweet idea.
I just have a hard, and this gets back to the same thing. It's hard to trick yourself into believing things that are comforting or into being a positive person if you're tuned into the fact that most of reality and most of nature is, I wouldn't say negative because I'm not giving a moral thing to it, but it impacts you in a negative way.
So let me ask you, why do you think it's hard?
It just is. Nothing good comes to anyone easily. It's like if you want to achieve anything or be optimized, it takes effort, hard work.
Are you sure about that? I mean, there seems to be some people who kind of are like born with silver spoons, and
well, absolutely. There's people who have advantages, genetic advantages, financial, familial, but
so why would it be
for
hard?
those who don't have those advantages? It's harder. So
yes, and I wouldn't disagree, but here's how I think of it, and we can get back to the Christian thing or Muslim thing or whatever, but because and remind me, because I do have something I think is fairly interesting or important to recognize if you're willing to do that. You know, when you were born, you can say that you come in as a clean slate. You brought some DNA baggage, you know, maybe some genetic material, you know, you got blue eyes, blonde hair, maybe there's some predispositions.
Born with crack in your system.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, so there's something. But other than that, you are pre-verbal, you're pre-thoughts, you're a lump of flesh, and you come out, and from the second you get out, people talk to you and they behave around you. And as the human sponge you are, which is pretty much just brainwaves functioning and body movements functioning, you absorb what's around you. You're influenced by your primary caretakers and your secondary caretakers and the media and everything in the world and circumstances and experiences. And you grow up adopting a lot of the beliefs and values of the people around you. So if money was hard to come by in your family, maybe you grow up thinking money's hard to come by. If it was easy to come by, maybe you think, hey, money grows on trees. This is cool. I can do anything I want. So it's a matter of having been conditioned, having literally been brainwashed from birth, especially to the age 7 or 8, which is when brainwaves are primarily in the theta range, and we're very suggestible, and we're kind of walking around in hypnosis as a child. And then what happens is the brain also has what's called the reticular activating system, which scans the environment for anything that's wrong so that it keeps you alive. But it also looks for matches. So when you go out and you buy a new car, and maybe you had never considered buying this car, but now you've got this car, you drive around, you see all this other people drive that vehicle.
Yep. Patterning.
It becomes predominant in your mind, and so suddenly you start noticing it. Well, the same thing is true with your experiences. If you have positive experiences, then your brain looks for more positive experiences. If you have negative experiences, your brain looks for more of those. If you say, why am I such an idiot? Your brain will go, well, because you stuck your head in the toaster when you were 4, you didn't have the right education, your parents sucked, you didn't do it. And it will give you all these reasons and experiences and associations of why you're screwed up. If, on the other hand, what we were talking about before, you say, how come I'm so wonderful? If you're not used to doing that a lot, your brain will go, well, oh, well, I got a good grade here, or I did something there, but it's harder because you're not as practiced in it. It's literally neural pathways that you're.
It's such a tightrope. Like, you think about raising your kids, you don't want to be blowing smoke up their ass all the time, giving them this overinflated ego, but at the same time, when you're critical, you're cognizant of the fact that you could be planting these little time capsule bombs or landmines that, they're going to grow up with these negative thoughts. I'm not good enough. It's very tough when you talk about raising young kids. I got a 6-year-old and I see it. It's like a daily tightrope walk. Like, I want to critique them, but I want them to be encouraged to try and to thrive without, you know what I mean?
Well, if you have one child, your first child, you're an amateur.
I'm only having one. Fuck it.
Well, but what I'm saying is you're an amateur parent, and right. I have 2. Some people have 10. I don't know that you get really any better. What everybody says about the second child is you're so overly protective and so cautious and so this with the first child, and then the second one comes and you're like, well, I can back off a little bit. I guess by your 10th child, you're probably like, oh, fucking let them go do whatever they want.
You're like, how many do we have again?
Yeah. So it's well,
and there's a lot to birth order psychologically. Second children manifest with these certain things, and is it because the parents became a little laissez-faire, or is it's a lot of things. It's then there's the competition between the siblings, so more scarcity mindset comes in.
So my point is you're a product of your conditioning, you're a product of the world, you're a product of your experiences and everything, and then you at some point realize, if you're lucky in your life, that you have a choice about how you want to assign meaning to it and how you want to evaluate it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And at that point you decide, am I going to live as a champion or a victor, or am I going to live as a victim or a loser? I'm like, I am Spartacus. I am a champion. My Game of Thrones thing is, you never see the ultimate swordsman go, bring me your wimpiest, so that I can beat the crap out of him. It's like, give me your most, your most severe, talented, the chess player, the world-class chess people don't look for easy players. They look for worthy opponents. But most of us look for the easy route because we're so tired of having it be tough. And so much of that is attitudinal. You get your attitude right, and attitude doesn't just mean pumped up and I can do anything. Having the right attitude for what you do when, like sometimes you want to be peaceful and calm, sometimes you want to be pumped up, sometimes you want to be powerful and have conviction. Sometimes you want to be silly and goofy. All those things are important. And you can learn to live a really fun, joyous, incredible life by doing that and rehearsing that. That's why gratitude is so incredible, to just count your blessings constantly and not just count them, but to count them and actually appreciate where you are. Now, another point to the law of attraction is you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. When you look in the mirror and smile, the mirror smiles back. It doesn't do something different. It does immediately what you're reflecting.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Let's say, hypothetically, you have someone who's hypothetically 54 years old, and they've lived a life that has had not undertones, not overtones, just tones. Mm-hmm. Nothing but negative from early childhood on.
Like, literally been victimized, just had bad happenstance. And
like shitty parents and negative shitty parents. You're never going to do anything, all of that, right? How does one change how they look in the mirror if we're talking about half a century?
By killing them in their sleep.
Excuse me. Well, that is the caveat for most people. They have to get to the point where they decide, I don't want to do this anymore. It's kind of like if you were punching yourself in the face constantly and you went, well, I think I should stop that. Then maybe you would. You could say, I can't stop it because all I know I've ever done is punch myself in the face. But that's what a lot of people do emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
Right. You condition yourself into believing that punches are hugs. Yeah,
and that you can't do anything about it and it'll never be different. And the thing to do is probably you need to create an opening. You know why? Even a tiny opening, it's like a little trickle of water can become a gushing river, by continuing to have drip, 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 it can erode rocks. And, the Colorado River didn't start as Colorado River. It started as something tiny. So if you can create a small opening, and by the way, water pushed through a small opening under pressure has incredible force. So it can cut steel and concrete and everything else. But if you can create a small opening where you got to create a small opening for yourself where something is possible. And the same thing is true when people affirm. They go, I'm worthless. I've never made any money. Life sucks. It's horrible. And then they go, I can do it. I'm a champion. I am this. And it doesn't feel real. And that is the problem. So they quit because it's incongruent. Right. They don't feel it.
Discipline, patience.
But if they were to say, or they could put it in the form of a question like, I wonder if I'll ever be able to do that. And if I could do that, what would it be like? So now they're beginning to entertain it. Like, what would life be like if I were more positive? And how soon could I find myself thinking positive thoughts? Or how many positive thoughts could I begin to think today if, without knowing any better?
Or think about your potential and start working towards it versus thinking I'm the shit right now immediately.
Or simply saying I'm not there yet and affirming that I don't know that I'm powerful, but I wonder if I could begin to learn to be wonderful. Could I discover how where in my life some good has happened if I were to put my attention on different experiences than the one I focus on? Might not I find some things that I didn't notice previously? And sometimes they need that to be pointed out to them. They need somebody to come along and go, you're focused on this and you're missing that, in the same way that.
Well, a lot of people feel desperate and lost, and that could be tricky too, because you can end up with some guru or, getting roped in by some spiritual leader.
You could. And so what?
Yeah.
I mean, no, but you could, yes. And
it's like, but what you're saying though is be your own spiritual leader. Like that's the.
Well, for I said, remind me about the Christian thing, and and everything. So here's. I came through born again Christendom. I came through mysticism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, and Lao Tzuism, and Taoism. And
I want to hear about this commune too.
But here's so we can talk about it.
I definitely.
But here's the thing. There's a fraction of people. And I was one of them at one time, but there's a fraction of people who believe, for example, the Bible is the inspired word of God and everything that's in it is divinely ordained. It was written through humans, but God spoke. And there's no other way to think about it but that. And for them, they will live their life accordingly. And some of them live really wonderful, remarkable lives and do lots of good in the world. And other people are very legalistic and religious and not quite such nice people or so good. And then there are the faux ones who pretend it or go to the church and I mean, there's any kind of permutation is possible. But here's what I say. Two things is what I say. One is if you took just the red letter, because there's a red letter Bible, which is just Jesus's words in the red letter Bible, just listen to the words and see what Jesus says. You probably would live a better life than if you didn't. In other words, love others like I have loved you, turn the other cheek. Blessed are the meek. If you
be
just
kind
live,
to hookers,
huh?
Be kind to hookers.
Be kind to hookers. Yeah, forgive it. But I love the Bible. I mean, and sometimes I quote the Bible, and people are like, "Are you religious? Do you like the Bible?" I like it as an allegory.
Right.
I mean, if you look at it as, Joshua and the people are going around Jericho and they're trumpeting and the walls come tumbling down. You could say, well, that's an actual historical fact and God was doing this. Or you could say, wow, the same thing happens when you are jubilant. that the walls that, or the foundation that binds you or keeps you constricted will come down when you celebrate and when you lift your voices up, whether it's to a God outside you or a God inside, or you're just practicing gratitude. If your attitude is, wow, this is amazing, you will break through limitations. So you could take that. David and Goliath. David is this little guy. Goliath's the big giant. David slows the giant. So any of your opposition could be slain. It doesn't matter how big you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of, he used a tiny little pebble, but he aimed it in the right direction. And he said, Goliath goes, oh, you bring me this child. And he says, today, God will be victorious. He believed that he would triumph. So what does he do? He goes, steps forward, hits the guy in the head with a rock, and he triumphs. Is it historical? Is it true? You know, who cares? The example in it that you can extract from it, and you might have multiple examples from it.
Things you can read any theme from.
Well, Viktor Frankl, who spent a lot of years in concentration camps, came out and became, you know, a psychologist, psychiatrist, said, you know, man's search for meaning. He said, you can take me and put me in a cell, but you can't imprison my mind. I get to determine what the meaning is. And so that's true of all of us. If you decide, I'm the one who's authoring my life, and this sucks and I'm bad, then that's what you're writing. If you decide, you know, I can learn to do other things and I can learn to have a great life and I can learn to celebrate things. And if you look for blessings in everything, you're going to find them. If you look for problems in everything, you're going to find those too. You're going to find whatever you're looking for.
So what you're saying is, unlike myself and Michael, you don't cry yourself to sleep at night.
In jubilation.
Tears of joy.
I mean, you know, like anything, I'll tell you what happens for me. There's things that happen. There's things that are huge that sometimes come up. I do not deal with them the way I would have dealt with them 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Did you have some catastrophe that brought you to this? Or?
I've had many catastrophes in my life, multiple catastrophes in my life. Yeah.
Well, when did you get into this positive thinking?
Well, I started as a kid. I was just a strange kid at 6 or 7 wanting to be a priest, and I liked mysticism, and I had my mom read me the Bhagavad Gita when I was a kid, and I liked the whole monk and monastic thing. Mm-hmm. I became a born-again Christian at 15. Kind of became disillusioned.
So you've always been seeking for meaning then?
Oh, yeah. I've always just this weird kid who's always looked for something beyond. You know, but have I had, has everything worked out? No. Have I had disappointment? No. I've had tragedy. I've had lots of crap happen. You know.
I just don't know if there's any incident that triggered it. Like we have this thing we continually seem to talk about, like origin stories in a superhero movie or a villain. There was this moment that it's easy to quantify as the trigger.
The actor Nick Mancuso was like, Rex, how did you end up in Wisconsin? And I told him, he goes, oh my God, you have to write that. That's ordained by God. He says, I'll help you write it. You know, and it came from a tragedy. It came from kind of some very horrible circumstances. But as a result, my children are born. I do have a life, you know, with them. I enjoy that. And
so your marriage was the tragedy?
Yeah, that too. But maybe none of that would have happened had this event not happened when I was about 25 years old. So, you know, it is, and I had to learn how to reconcile things. I mean, when some things happened, I was very angry and mad at certain people or certain situations or myself for a good long time. And at some point I had to say, I'm carrying baggage that doesn't serve me.
For sure.
You know, I mean, it's one thing if it keeps you from making the same mistake over and over again, but it's another if you're just angry or if you feel like a victim or you're a survivor, but you never get past living like, you know, you're surviving. I think the goal of human consciousness is to thrive. I mean, plants grow and then spread their seed and then more come about. You know, our increase in abundance and expansion seems to be what's happening. And we tend to look at it as entropy and decay and destruction. So it's truly a matter of deciding where you're going to look at, and what you focus on is what you get.
Stand on the table, take that other view of it. It's hard though.
And a
lot of it too is I think the world needs all kinds too. I think we need nihilists, and I think nihilism is just as valid a worldview, really. I mean, because you're making a conscious choice to key into the positive. Somebody else could fall right into keying into the negative. And
if that's what they choose, it's not up to me to tell them otherwise. Right. I mean, in other words,
just like I can't imagine a world without the Harvey P cars in it. You know what I'm saying? The lovable loser, the browbeaten who never gets a leg up or whatever. That story resonates, you know?
Well, I would liken it to this, and because I want to be real cautious in how I say this. The world needs everybody who's in it. You know, it is what it is. They're there, and everybody's at different parts of the experience. They're like, let's pretend we're all sleeping, you know, and some person's dreaming a nightmare, and some person's having a sex dream, and some person's dreaming something very celebratory, and some people
My sex dreams are nightmares.
Could be, and somebody's dreaming about God, and somebody's dreaming about chasing a puppy, and somebody's dreaming about, I mean, it's all going on, and people will wake up at different times. We don't all wake up together. And some people, when they wake up, go, God, I had the worst dream. Another person wakes up and goes, oh, my God, it was so hot. And another person goes, oh, Lord, I can't tell you how wonderful it was. And then someone goes, I had a dream. It made absolutely no sense. I was here, then I was there. And it's all part of the human experience. And all human experiences is part of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And the more we can become aware without, I try not to, you know, I'm not saying that if today it snows, like I got snowed in. I wasn't able to get out of the driveway for Sunday and yesterday, and then the guy came and plowed me out last night. I could spend my entire day fuming about how I couldn't get out of the driveway, or I could call somebody and go, "Can you come and plow because the guy's not here yet?" You know, just it's like,
or shovel it,
or I could shovel it myself, which I'm not going to do. but the point is it's. I can fume about it. I can accept it. I can say, hey, guess what? You know what? I get to stay in and watch Deadwood for 13 hours.
Right.
You know, and I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So it's what you make of it. It's literally what you assign to it.
I mean, if you're like the single mother who has to get to work and get snowed in like that,
it can be tough. It can be tough, but that's what life offered you. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
Either make lemonade or cry.
The not being a victim thing is hugely resonant to me. And we warned you that we say a lot of horrible shit on this podcast.
As a result, I've said the F word once and shit maybe 3 or now 4 times.
But he's been quiet because he doesn't even know what to say if he's not saying something despicable.
I have so many questions for Rex, though.
Right. Well, ask him.
Like, I want Rex to fix me. This is a conversation.
We don't just have...
I want to leave here fixed.
Right.
Is my deal.
He wants to be neutered. I can't believe that. okay.
That might fix some of his problems.
Here, turn your head and cough.
Okay, you were saying the world needs all kinds.
Yeah.
Right? And I say, does the world need a one-armed, sexually assaulting motherfucker
Kind of, because he made you, who I think is the perfect fucking podcast co-host, and he made you, maybe he did inform your negative worldview, but I fucking love it when you're shitting on Quentin Tarantino. And that's what I'm saying. The world does need all kinds. So sometimes it needs monsters to make interesting people. Most of the interesting people I know did not grow up as kids with the luxury of creature comfort. Almost all the comedians came from some fucked up background. That's what makes them interesting. We talked about separating the art from the artist. It's almost always fucked up people that make provocative, interesting, subversive art, you know? So it kind of takes one-armed pieces of shit like Willis T. Yeats III to make a Michael Gall.
Coming for you, Willis T. Yeats III.
That arm will adorn our walls, motherfucker.
I need to employ the secret and the law of attraction to figure out how to get
arm.
This guy's fucking arm.
Dude, you love Breaking Bad. Magnets.
I loved it.
Science, bro. Just get a huge magnet and suck that arm right off his body.
Yeah, bitch. Magnets.
Well, I think, again, I think that, I don't know. I don't have the answers for that. That's not what I'm, my thing isn't,
I see, though, what you're saying, though, is a personal point of, or a personal path. It's probably better to try and live a life of happiness and to be well adjusted and try and find this enlightenment and positivity. Everyone would benefit from it. Maybe the world would benefit from it, but I'm just saying I like the world as this flawed, fucked up, imperfect.
It's perfect
thing
as
with all
it
these
is.
bungled and botched people doing all these fucked up things. Like if Florida Man didn't exist, my day would be so much more boring. I fucking love Florida Man. The ubiquitous Florida Man, always up to some nasty bath salt shit.
Like, you know how there are those people who you were talking about how people are take on a victim role or whatever. There are so many people who are talented in things, who have a base talent in something or are just really very good, but never get a break.
Right.
Right.
True.
What do you do with a guy? Here's the fix me part. What do you do with a guy who gets nothing but breaks and never follows through? If I was to tell, I could tell you stories that are just, my God, I get nothing but opportunities.
Billy Squire's wife now.
I get nothing but opportunities all through my life in any creative pursuits that I do. And then my thing is, I will go and I'll say, I'll do something, and then people will go, "Oh, wow, that was good," and I'll say, "All right, I'm out," and then I walk over to the next thing. Like, I want to show you I can do it, but the follow through, because I always feel sort of like a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Like you liked that because you have shitty taste. You liked my song because you don't know what good music is. You liked this because you like shitty movies. You don't.
Well, that's because you're telling yourself the same narrative your mom told you instead of writing a new narrative that's positive, etc. That's what he would say, I think, or a shrink might say.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you. I mean, in other words,
especially knowing what I know about
what you are doing is historically recounting something. You're saying, here's what happens. I get the breaks, and this is how I have handled it up till now. The question becomes, is what will you do the next time? What will you do? Will you follow what you've always done? Or will you cut yourself some slack and go, how could I begin to think about, do this, and feel about it differently so that I take advantage of it? How can I stop disowning who and what I am and start accepting and enjoying and validating it? So it's the kind of questions you ask or the kind of statements that you use to affirm that direct anyone into the behaviors or the experiences that they have in life. I don't have, answers other than to say, you're the author of your life. Write it the way you want it to come out. If you write a screenplay, you do that with your characters. Why not treat yourself like that character and go, here's what I want Michael or Jason or Rex or whomever.
Never ends well.
Well, right. I mean, this is called a matter of good taste. What do you want to create for yourself?
So here's our artistic conversation we get into as well, because you were talking about catastrophe versus what was the other? The way that people change. Conditioning. Right. I hate the idea of prescriptive arcs. As a screenwriter, they always want you to cram a character arc in. There always has to be a character arc. To me, that's bullshit. If you go back to the classic Greek, comedy versus tragedy, it breaks down pretty much that tragedy is the fatal flaw, the refusal to arc destroys you. Comedy essentially being where somebody does change and they end up okay, or it's not ultimate destruction at least. I love stories of tragedy. I love cautionary tales like There Will Be Blood, where the guy doesn't have this epiphany. That shit resonates to me way more than every Pixar movie ever, where they have to learn to work together and then they thrive, etc.
Yeah, people don't change. 99% of people out there don't change. So if a guy's shitty at the beginning of a movie, he should still be shitty at the end of the movie.
Especially in a movie that doesn't span a lot of time. If it's a movie that spans 50 years, then maybe you could show conditioning throughout that. American History X, you see these little things where the guy loses his need to be racist or whatever, his psychological need that was feeding. But
racial harmony through laundry.
Catastrophe, he mentioned, here's the kind of arc I like. I like regarding Henry shot in the head in the first 10 minutes. I like the inciting incident to be a catastrophe and a character changes like that. And then the rest of the movie is trying to reconcile who he was versus who he is now. That's so much more interesting to me than 80-90% of the movies, especially when you go through the system with execs and everything who've all read Save the Cat and they all make you fucking write towards some transformative arc. I just can't stand it. That was a rant.
No, I understand. But I agree with a lot of it, both as far as writing or art or acting or, filmmaking or any storytelling, and as well as in life when and I want to be careful because the term itself has now become pejorative about rich people. I love rich people. I love billionaires. I love them all. I mean, if they're able to make money, that's one thing. And there are really, 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 really good philanthropic billionaires, and then there are the greedy, predatory ones. Okay, so I try not to lump them all in together. Having said that, people will say, "Well, but in order to make all that money, you have to deprive other people." Well, you know what? There's no shortage of money in the world. And if you don't believe me, just turn around because somebody's printing more money right now. They just make it up whenever they want. It's
some
just
new
digits now.
resources being
it's not
unearthed
based
by
on gold
an African kid with no tools.
But your point, 99% of the people never change. It's true. 99% of the people will do what they've always done, and they'll get the same results that they've always gotten, and they'll complain about those results over and over and over again.
Right. That's
and go, why is my life suck? Why do I keep going through the same thing? Why am I on this hamster wheel and never getting any better? And it's because they accept it. They go, this is what I know. This is what I do. It's what I've always done. People will justify it. Well, the reason I'm fucked up is because of this, and they will continue to do that. And that's why that silly saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result makes perfect sense. Because if you repeat success, you'll be more successful. If you repeat failure, you'll continue to be a failure. So it's what are you growing in your garden? Are you growing weeds or are you growing flowers?
Weed.
And there's nothing wrong with weeds. I mean, the 99%, like the stories like what you just said, they can understand it, they can relate to it.
They're cautionary tales. Too.
Right.
They are telling you to practice positive
thinking. They're living on the feudal hillside, you know what I mean? I mean, They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're going, my life sucks and I don't know if I'm going to get out of it. And they see a movie like that, or they see Falling Down or something, and they go, right,
Or they go shoot up a bunch of people.
Well, sadly, there are those people, and
not to blame art for that whatsoever, but everything's to blame. Like everything has a hand in somebody becoming that. You know what I mean? The entire world led to them existing. So.
Oh yeah. So one of my favorite books, and I'll bring it around this way, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he wrote this book as his story goes, he met Andrew Carnegie, who was one of the richest people in the world at the time. Totally. Carnegie's invited him to his home and said, I want to give you a job. You've got, a certain amount of time to consider, and do you want it or not? But I got to tell you, it's going to take 20 years and you're not going to get a dime from me. But I will hook you up with all of my friends, and you'll study the 500 or so richest people in the world.
What was this guy's name? Epstein?
Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie.
He got tapped by some Mossad
and
agent
Jeffrey did not kill himself,
Carnegie.
right? And so then he wrote this book, and that book is responsible for more people becoming millionaires than any other book,
or a factor in them becoming responsible.
I mean, it's attributed to, and. The point is that Hill said, if you want money, you can get money, but you have to be aware that with it comes a cost, and there's a price to pay. Now, toward the time that he died, around 1970, he said, through his life, he said, I used to think, I wrote Think and Grow Rich, and that's what it was about. But he said, out of the 520 people, the only person, and he said, I got to know these people. I lived with them, or I stayed with them. I knew their wives and their children. I knew them. Many of them committed suicide. Many of them died of drugs, or drug addicts or drunks. They got divorced. Their kids died of drug addicts or drunks. They were all messed up. He said only one out of the 500 or so seemed to have a good life, and that was John Burroughs, the author, naturalist. And he said he seemed to get it, and that it was about having peace, not necessarily having wealth. And if you seek peace, you can have peace. If you seek wealth, you can have wealth. So it depends on what you're looking for. Now, his formula was, you have to have, in order to get money, you have to have a passionate desire. You have to want it really like a white hot desire, and you have to believe you can get it. You can't be half baked about it. You have to go, this is mine, and I'm going to do it. And I'll do whatever I have to take legally in order to make it happen. And then you take those steps and do it, and you persist until you make it happen. But along the way, what's truly important is, he would say, go the extra mile, become the kind of person. And I tell people this in my film classes. When you're in a movie on a set, you have to think of it like we're all going camping. And so if I'm a casting director, producer, do I want to invite this person on my camping trip or my fishing trip? Are they going to be part of the team? Are they going to add value? Am I going to have a good time? Or are they going to be a total royal pain in the butt? So, you hire based on that. People get mad at Hollywood because they go, nobody will let me in. I'm pounding on the walls and nobody let me in. Well, Hollywood is a meritocracy to many degrees. They want you to prove yourself. They want you to do things because everybody else has done it. The same with closing the field in education and everything. We're going to make the what you have to do harder than what we had to do because we want to close the field so that not just anyone can get in. So there's all these things.
Well, it's tough because they see the enfant terrible or whatever make it big too. All the time, there's always the difficult actress or the fucking freak actor, and they're often the most talented, or at least, you know.
Here's what I say. I go, you all see people who are working that cannot act. Or you go, oh, I could act better than them, or they suck, or they're in the old days it used to be, well, they're a TV actor, they're not a real actor, you know, or they're a daytime actor, whatever, you know.
Slumming it.
But here's my point: they knew how to do something right,
or they were cool to be on set with. They knew
how to get a career.
Right?
They can't act, but they can have a career. Where other people are the best actors ever and can't act and get a career. So, and I used to say, and when I was an actor in Hollywood, going to workshop after workshop, they were like, "You want to be an Academy Award-winning actor? You want to be the best actor? You want to be the method actor? You want to be this, that, and the other?" And I did. I wanted to be the best, the top of them. And I realized that's not so important. That's not so important. What's important is being able to book a job. Mm-hmm. And booking the job is different than having the job. And knowing that they're two different skills, but that they're related is important to know.
Yeah, I just had a screenwriter buddy post on Facebook saying, would you rather A, win an Oscar for writing original screenplay, or B, just get fat residual checks the rest of your life? I'm like, B, at this point, fuck it.
You grow with wisdom. I had a friend, I can remember this. I wanted to be a star. And he said, I just want to be a character actor who works all the time. And do you know who makes more money than actors? Mm-hmm. I mean, except the Tom Hanks and the top extras. They work more than actors. You know who makes more money than extras and actors usually? The crew.
Because they're working constantly.
They're working constantly. I can get hired as an actor for a day.
Right.
You know, or a week, you know, unless I get a series where and then now in today's world, you're getting a series. You're not even part of the cast. You're part of the reoccurring person who shows up. You know, your paycheck is different than it used to be. So knowing how to have a career, and what Napoleon Hill said is add value to everyone you meet. Cheer other people's successes on. Don't be a downer and rain on people's parades. Add value, uplift, be the kind of person everybody wants to be.
Brian Green?
Negative motherfucker.
Seriously.
So there's ways of doing things. I had a guy come to me recently and say, you know, I don't say this to blow my horn, but it was so touching. He said, "You were an example of how it should be on a set when I was with you." Now, I have not always been that way, true. You know, and I mean, especially when I was younger, I was
some of your anecdotes I see online are amazing.
I mean, I would tell people, you know, I'm going to kick your ass through your teeth if you show up here. My acting coach was like, you and this other guy, you know, the scourge of Hollywood, you know, you both have tempers and but the thing is, this guy said, you were a positive inspiration for everybody on the set. You know, you did your thing. You never complained. You did. And for me, I was like, I'm so thrilled to be here. This is so cool. I like this. I just did a commercial the other day, you know, and they were like, I moved to the other actor and said, I'm going to turn my back to camera so you have a close up. And I'm like, what? I go, you take the camera. I don't need it. You know, I mean, it's like, not that that's whatever, you know, this is in distant shots, you know, in background and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, you know, it's what can you give? What value can you add? How inspiring might you be? And you can't, you know, there's a notion, fake it till you make it, but you really can't fake sincerity. I mean, I know there's jokes, but you really want to be genuine. And when you're known that way,
which is ironic as hell because Hollywood is the mecca of faking sincerity.
Well, and egos and everything else, but I mean, that's where it's money driven. You know, they will work with somebody who's a total pain in the butt because of the dollar.
Right.
But I was recently somewhere where the guy said, I'm not going to work with this guy. I told him not to show up because he's a pain in the ass. And I just didn't want to deal with it and gave the parts, you know, somebody else kind of thing. You know, and the person was fairly well known, you know, but they're like, too many problems on the set to do this. Mm-hmm. So it's not worth the effort, you know? And so I just want to, I mean, as an actor or a filmmaker now, but as an actor, you know, I want to show up. I want to have a good time. And it wasn't always that way. I used to think, and here's where actors go awry. They read a script and they find out that they got 3 lines on page 75. And they go, you know. and they don't realize that all they're there to do is further the story for the lead character in the TV or whatever. They're not there to, you're not Surge in Beverly Hills Cop. This is not not your second. This is where, and they come on and they act like they're stars. So they come on like, this is my moment. I have to show.
Beverly Hills Cop.
Fucking love it.
So you got to know your place.
Balky.
You got to know your place, and you got to know that you're part of a team, even if it's not an ensemble cast, you're part of an ensemble. You are there to make everybody else look good.
Well, you've transitioned now from an actor to filmmaker, you said, to a degree. In all your vast experience in Hollywood, who was the best director you ever worked for and why? Like, what did they do that set them apart? Or even have you seen work, if you were just on set?
Well, I'm just going to tell you about my recent experience with a guy named Michael Pfeiffer.
Nice. Working a plug, too.
Working a plug. We just finished. He was so cool. Just the other day, he emailed me a scene and said, here's one of the scenes, and you can use it for your reel, contact an editor and stuff. And when we were done shooting, the editor had emailed me and said, oh, you're going to love the dailies, which was very, very cool. But Michael, shooting star, Peter Shereko and Michael Pfeiffer produced it. Peter I've known for years. He's Cactus Jack in Tombstone.
Oh.
And anyway, Peter called me up and said, would you like to do this role? And I said, yeah. And so then Michael emailed me and said, okay, cool. I'll see you when you get on the set. I hadn't met him before. He's done about 200 movies. I think he's directed 60 or 70 of them. He's produced, he's written, he's done all this stuff.
That's prolific.
Yeah, he's very prolific. So I get to the set and there's a number of scenes. Some they shot without me. And then there were some, of my prolific scenes. And I had a blast. Filmmaking has changed today. There's in the old days, there was no video village. It's been around for a while, but there was no video village. You just had a camera. You had a cameraman. The director would look through the viewfinder with the cinematographer. They would discuss the shot. He'd look at the opening. He'd look at the close. Go, okay. They'd shoot. And he'd go, yeah, okay. That's where we ended. Then you'd have to see the dailies. And you look at the dailies. You go, we got to go back. We got to reshoot this. We got to do that. Now you can edit right there on the screen. You can go move to your left, move up. Here, booking in. Let's do it again. Let's do this. It's very technically, it's different than in the old days. So there's different considerations that you have now. You can be interrupted multiple times. Like, oh, nope, stop, start again. Nope, stop, start again. In the old days, you got stopped because a plane flew over or something, or different. But they're different. Michael and his set and his crew and Peter's crew and cast. It was heavenly. It was wonderful. It was arduous. It was work. We spent 8 or 10 hours shooting this one scene. And from every conceivable angle and the reverses and everything else, and it was Michael Paré and a wonderful set of actors. Larry Poole, who plays his deputy, a guy named Tony Hebert, Mike Gaglio, myself, and a couple other people. There's one guy I can't think of his name, and I apologize. His name is Bob. I don't remember his last name, but Brett Culpepper and Brock, huh?
Bob De Niro?
Yeah, no, Bobby didn't show up that day, so Joey filled in for him. But so what the point is that it was like I don't want to say it was a love fest, but everybody was very supportive. Everybody cared. Everybody was really the spirit of we're all in this together. And
that trickled down from the director.
It trickles from the director and the producer. It trickles from the actors. Michael Paré was exemplary as
the producers are true too, because even if the director is great, if he's catching shit from up there, it's going to trickle down.
Well, and this oftentimes happens. This happens. A lot of directors don't have final cut today, and the producers are calling the shots, and the director's under a lot of stress. And a good director friend of mine recently died. He died end of December, and and he was in a situation like that. So it's one of those things where if you're on a ship crossing the ocean, both the captain and the first mate and everybody set the tone, but you try and keep your crew from mutiny, So anyway, I got to say that I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it was just truly a marvelous experience. And
You hear about so many megalomaniacs. Like I told the story before about Oliver Stone's face on a dartboard I saw at Johnny Depp's office. In the story, I asked him, was that from Platoon? Like he was such a monster, you had to get a dartboard? And he said, no, that was the rap gift Oliver gave to everyone, a dartboard with his own face, because he recognized he was such an asshole making it. But look at the fucking movie.
Right. Well,
astounding. Like, how do you, maybe it takes sometimes a megalomaniac, a Herzog, dragging a fucking steamboat over a hill in the Amazon. You got to be a madman to make that kind of movie, you know?
I would venture that given all of our discussions today, that there are those. I mean, think about it. I, as an actor, could do 500 roles in a lifetime or more. A director can only make so many movies, you know. I mean, because it takes a long time. A friend of mine came out with a wonderful movie. Todd Roberts came out with The Last Full Measure.
Yeah, my manager's the producer on that. He's been traveling with it the whole time.
Oh yeah, well Todd is.
What's up, Sydney? Props. The movie's amazing.
Yeah, no, it truly is, truly. But Todd, you know, wrote it, directed it, produced it, you know, with these, and it just came out.
It took them 20 years to get it made.
Yeah, I mean, and this is it,
Literally.
you know. So it's like, how many movies can a director have in them, you know? And look at Scorsese. I mean, how many? Let's say he's got 20 movies. I don't know what the count is, but you know,
and that's the guys who can make anything they want.
right?
Like Todd will make a Lonely Hearts. That's great, but it's not necessarily that everyone's throwing money at him. What's your next picture? You know, because not enough people see it, whether it was a matter of distribution issues or what. But,
well, and the interesting thing about Hollywood today is you can have a movie come out in the theater and bomb, but that doesn't mean your career is over.
Right.
Because they understand the logistics of opening against everything else in the consideration. So you come out with a movie that totally bombs and still be desired as a filmmaker. In the old days, maybe not so much, because if you bombed, there wasn't all the competition in the same way. You weren't coming up against all the tentpole movies, it's still.
There's so many other weird ways to bomb now too, like politics. Like school shooting happens, or a movie theater shooting, and then Gangster Squad has to be recut and all this and that. You know what I mean? The social media has changed the landscape. To look at Kevin Spacey, our man Spacey, with all the money in the world.
Yep.
Ridley Scott went back on the fucking fly and reshot that with Christopher Plummer, who crushed it.
Right.
I think he might have been a better choice than Spacey. I don't know. Didn't see Spacey's version. I'd love to, but Louis C.K. I watched his movie recently. I Love You, Daddy. Have you seen that?
No.
Dude, it's fucking awesome. If you like Woody Allen movies, it's that kind of thing.
That's cool.
It's great.
Well,
but they just disappear. I mean, Distro just evaporates because a tweet or some shit. It's crazy.
Well, I had an ex-girlfriend who got a soap opera, and she was debuting, and everybody was gathered around the TV, and Reagan got shot.
Oh God!
Not the same kind of thing, but you imagine going, "Hey, I'm on TV on this day," and then we're preempting everything because we're taking out to the street. So anything can go. But you know, Todd's movie, and Todd is a wonderful guy. I love him, and I love his movies. He did another one called Phantom, and great cast. Penn Densham was involved. Julian Adams were involved in that. Other very good filmmakers. And it always amazes me because, you know, a director is the reason why you have an AD, a good AD, is to be a communication point for everybody on the set, to be the safety person for everybody on the set, and to kind of like be an insulator for the director so that the producers and everybody else aren't preying on him, so that the director, he or she, can get her vision or his vision up on the screen with as little interference as possible. And a lot of people who are funding it look at it and go, I don't like that, I don't like this, or we're going to do this, or we're going to cut it differently than what the director has hoped for. And they can be under incredible amounts of stress. And they've got to get their project done on time and under budget and the whole thing. And, you know, it can tear at them. And then it depends on their level of confidence and security and whether or not they think they're a fraud or whether they think, you know, I can handle this. I mean, there's all the imposter syndrome, the whole thing. And when it's all said and done, hopefully they learn from it and go on to the next one and go on to the next one. If 15, 20 years later, they're still being a total turd, Well, maybe they haven't learned that much. They're getting money, they're doing their thing, but they're still.
I worry that Oliver Stone is less of a turd, and now his movies aren't good anymore.
Well,
like when he was a turd, his shit was fire.
There are those people who have horrible reputations, and then and then people make excuses for the people with horrible reputations instead of going, you know what, we're done. You don't treat people like this here. We're done, because you know why? The movie business is really nothing more than soap sales. If you can sit a butt in a theater for $10 or $12 now, that's what it's all about. You're every actor now is a pitchman somewhere in the world, and it's really. Yes, they get to do their manufactured industrial art, but at the same time, it's really all the bottom line.
Do you feel they charge too much for movies?
Yeah, I grew up. I went to movies. They were like a quarter, and then they were like $1, and then
it's gone up like CEO pay rates though, while people are still making $8 flipping burgers. So I got to work fucking how many hours to take my kids to the movies? I got to work a week to take two kids and a spouse.
I was
popcorn.
16 years
it's
old.
Like theme park money, dude. It's crazy.
I'm 16 years old. I think movie prices were $1 or $2. I could fill my gas. I had a Lincoln Mercury. And I could fill the entire tank for $5. It was 24 cents a gallon. I could take a girl out to a steakhouse and for $4 or $5 buy a steak and potato and.
I'm feeling nostalgic for something I never lived through.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't know this, but so for like $10 or $15, I could go to the movie, fill my car with tank, take this girl out, and then go out for ice cream afterwards. Where now that same thing is like $60, $70, $80, $100, and I'm like, what kids can afford that? They're not making.
That's why they're butt fucking. It's free. Kids. That's what they do.
So, they butt fuck?
Yeah.
That reference went over my head, but it gave me a great. It gave
I had to work some in if we have a fan or two out there.
I'm completely unaware of this. I got to watch more Disney Plus.
Yeah, it gave me a visual I won't quickly forget, but.
Because they can't afford to do anything, though. It's like,
oh, I get it now. Now I get the reference. Well, no, it's true.
Well, they're literally butt fucking.
But well, I'll give you an example. By the way, I'm going to make a plug here. I think every project that anyone ever does should be SAG.
Everyone should be SAG.
Every movie you make should be SAG, and I'll tell you why I think that.
This is gonna be good.
Rex was the AD. On a feature that I on New Day,
right. and we were at each other's throats the entire time.
Butted heads so hard.
The AD is supposed to be his consigliere.
I was supposed to be his right arm, but I was more like his knife in the back.
Yeah, Rex wanted this so badly to be a SAG production, and I am vehemently anti-union in every application.
Oh shit!
Every app. You know what? Unions took away the fucking Suzy Q out of my life. I can't have a goddamn Suzy Q now because of fucking unions. And if one more liberal ass union sucker puts up a meme on Facebook saying something like on Labor Day, you'll see it. It'll be unions gave you this and this and this 80 years ago.
Right.
What the fuck in the last 80 years, aside from killing Jimmy Hoffa?
What good have they done?
What fucking have unions done?
Hey, man, there's a ton of bloat. There's a ton of bureaucracy. There are definite problems with them, but I'm not going to completely disagree with you.
No, and I won't completely disagree with you either, and then I'll tell you why I think everything should be union.
And okay, let's say take New Day. Let's use an example from that. Were you there when we shot in the abandoned mental hospital?
I sure was. It was the coldest I've ever been.
Yes. Had that been a union shoot, I would have been shut down.
Yeah, is that place by like Watertown Plank Road?
No, this is way out of some weird mental house.
It's outside of Sheboygan. Yeah.
Oh, even better.
I saw Jason and he shot something else there.
Jason shot a like a found footage Blair Witch kind of a thing.
Dude, you can't go wrong with an abandoned mental
No, and it's scary, but it had like what? It had a hole knocked in the wall or something where the doors were open. I remember those kerosene furnaces or whatever to keep the place warm, and then you were like sucking on an exhaust pipe the entire time.
Yeah, we had these enormous. It looked like jet engines, and we could blow them for about 15 minutes
because they sounded like jet engines.
And then we had to turn them off, and we tried to get a take, and everyone was dying, and That's when John Waite was there, and he got stuck in a snowbank. Matt Ott had to go and fucking dig his ass out.
What's up, Ott?
Yeah, cheers.
Ott just got a vasectomy.
Oh,
Good
God.
for him.
But that
I was hoping to get a
production,
urologist to sponsor us so I can maybe get a free one. So my copay is $588 fucking dollars.
yikes!
Ooh.
That whole production would have been shut down
Right.
had it been SAG, which means that it wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Well, you might not have been able to do that there, but you would have been able to do something else. But I don't disagree with that. Well, the reason why I say that everything should be SAG is this. And especially if you're a student, because now you can do a student SAG film like at UWM or whatever, UCLA or whatever. You can do it and it doesn't really cost you anything because it's a student film. Well, in my early day, they had one contract, and then they had two contracts, low budget and higher budget. Then they have low budget, high budget, then modified budget and ultra low budget, this kind of budget, that kind of. And so what it's done is it's taken the money out of movie making, and when I started I was 18, and I think I can remember the scale price because I was so excited by it. It was $172 and some chump change for 8 hours on a set in Hollywood, whether you were there 8 seconds or 8 hours.
That was union scale.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, and then what you did
That's
is
a day rate.
you worked plus 10. Well, and weekly was 604. This was 1974, 75.
That's a lot of money back then, though. 604.
was.
If
It
you
was.
worked a month, you're making $2,400 back then. That's
Well,
pretty
and
decent.
$2,400 or something back then was like your quarter in unemployment. I mean, that's
Right.
you didn't have to make $100,000 in order to get unemployment. You could make like $2,000, but making $2,000 was hard, and making $2,000 as an actor is very hard. But my point is now if you do a SAG ultra low budget, I think they just raised the rate, but it was like $125. So say I work 8 hours for $125. I used to work for $172. It's now 40 years later. So the rate of inflation, I'm making like $40 to work on a ultra low budget movie or a SAG modified movie. Instead of making $900,000 or $100,000 a day like you would in television, you're making $300.
Mhm.
Still good money.
But
I
these
mean,
people-
most people don't make $375 a day. But the point is, my point with the whole union thing is this. It's a protocol and it's a process. You have a sign-in time and a sign-out time. You have penalty times. You have meal times. You have things that you have to adhere to. And because the industry, since the advent of SAG, has been around, most movies are SAG up until recently. I mean, now more and more non-unions coming out. But when you do a movie or a film or a short with a SAG bug, everybody who's done that, who could hire you, knows you've had to spend money and act in a particular way, which you don't have to do if it's a grassroots film. They don't know what you did. People say, I can make a movie with no money. Nobody in Hollywood wants you to make a movie with no money because they spend hundreds of millions of dollars making movies. They want to know you can spend money, allocate it, get the vision up on the screen. Blair Witch may or may not have cost that. Insidious or Paranormal Activity may have not been made for, that's Hollywood marketing. So we don't really know what anything. If they say it had no money in it, it probably
Well,
cost
take
them.
like
If they say
Kramer cost $7,000, but then he got a grant from the Sundance. What is it? The Alfred, whatever. It's like a science grant from Sundance. Another
Alfred E.
25
Newman.
grand. Yeah.
The Alfred E. Newman
Yes,
Award.
exactly.
Yeah.
So my point is
But I'm just saying those movies.
Go ahead.
Those movies, so many movies wouldn't exist if they had to pay those rates, though.
Well, of course,
Technology has democratized everything to the point where, like, we used a cell phone to shoot most of Cactus Jack, doing the Soderbergh thing. You're not spending on even film anymore. You literally can make a movie for nothing.
You can.
So then to have to spend all that money to use these certain actors, that shit is crazy to me.
Well, yeah, it's an interest.
If you're talking studios, et cetera, sure. But
Well,
outside of that system,
no, everybody should be able to make a movie, and the fact that they can make it for no money is a fantastic thing, and it is democratized. That said, I think a lot of people, because they can make a movie with their phone, have never studied filmmaking. They don't know anything about film. They don't know film history.
well, that's true.
And that's fine too.
They should be allowed to make shitty movies.
Of course, that's fine too. But what I'm saying is, in terms of professional status, until the world is non-union, if such a thing happens, and it could very well be, SAG may not be here the whole time.
That's what I'm praying for.
Well, and maybe
Well,
rightly
if
so.
we get universal health care, there's one less reason to have unions.
Yeah, I suppose. But
Big reason.
my point is that when what you've done when you've put that SAG bug at the end of your movie is that other people know that you followed similar protocols that they have. So they know that as a filmmaker, in order to get your movie made, you had to
operate within that system,
within that parameter.
Yeah,
and that lends credibility to that. It also lends credibility to your festival runs. Now, could a movie without the bug get successful, or go to have a successful festival run, or become the darling movie of the decade? Sure.
Well, take Tarantino again.
Mm-hmm.
If he lived in this era, technology having democratized the processes it has, he very well could have made a Reservoir Dogs with way shittier actors.
Yeah.
And hardly anyone would have saw it, and he wouldn't be where he is today. So there's something to be... I see what you're saying. It's that stamp of approval that then a producer will be like, oh, this guy not only knows how to work within this process, but has made shit that's been vetted at least to a point where he got legitimate actors, et cetera, in it. But I don't know. I mean, I still feel cream will rise to the top. If you make an amazing fucking movie on your cell phone with your friends,
I was sitting with somebody at William Morris, and they said to me, well, there's a $300 million movie that'll never be made. And I said, why? And they said, so-and-so turned it down. And I said, well, why not somebody else? And he went, who? This. They're not going to open it. They can't open it. You know? And I was like, well, that's the difference between you and Midwest movie making. We just go, let's go get a bunch of people, go down the river and make a movie.
Right.
You know?
And he's like, and no one will ever see it, and you won't make dick.
Right, exactly. You're not going to make your money back. You know, you can throw it up on a sheet in the backyard so your grandma can look at it. But, you know, we're talking about who can open this picture of this size. What star do we need in order to get butts in the theater?
And a lot of that's done foreign pre-sales now to even finance the movie off the star's back.
Right. So, I mean, you know, with me, I don't have any hard, fast rules. I encourage people to go SAG for that reason, especially if you're in film school. If you're at a college, just go SAG.
That just prevents you from working in so many other things, though.
Huh?
If you're a union, like I'm WGA, I'm in the Writers Guild, so I'm not allowed to write.
And I'm not allowed to act.
Exactly.
Right. No,
so I'm just saying it prevents you. If you're a student, man, there's so many things you can't act in now. Most things you can't act in.
Well, I'm not saying be a SAG actor as a student.
I'm saying make a SAG
I'm saying if you're a filmmaker in school, make it. This whole Phi Corps thing, I mean, there are people who are Phi Corps and different
John
things.
Ridley's Phi Corps to the Guild.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are, you know, and there's a point at which you're too big. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the difference between, you know, in union duels, for example, you know, I have a friend, he makes maybe $500,000 a year or $1 million a year making movies. He pays the same amount of dues that Tom Hanks pays, who makes, you know,
right.
You know, that's not really fair.
They all got their problems. Like as a writer too, you guys don't have the team aspect to deal with.
Right.
A writing team can make a certain amount of money,
right,
but you cut it in half. So individually, you don't qualify for health care.
Everything. I mean, you know, I need to make a certain amount of money every year in order to qualify for health care, pension, and welfare.
You got to make double as a team what a normal writer would make to make.
Of course, you would. You would.
And now they do this bullshit of paper teams, where I was telling you about this before. I think when we had John on, that maybe I was telling him before the show, but they got this thing in TV where they'll say, "All right, our budget's getting low for the writers' room, so we're going to take you two guys who are not a team, and we're going to make you a team." So now we just paid you half of what we got.
Oh my God.
Well, here's the last thing. I mean, I'm not necessarily the definitive word,
which the guild needs to crack down on, motherfuckers.
But here's the thing: union came about to protect people like the Three Stooges and other actors, you know, or Laurel and Hardy, things like that, who were working and not getting paid what they were due, or one person would get nothing and the other person would get a lot. So it was to make, you know, so that actors could have a living and that they'd be protected, and so that there weren't abuses or violations on the set where you work, you know, 20 hours a day and not making any.
I mean, that's to his point, though, that when unions came about, like, yeah, you had the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, form some fucking unions.
Sure.
You know?
But that said, they may have extended a reach, and then it becomes a time when the steel unions and everything else has driven the cost up. So it's true that there's you know, good with the bad, but it originated, I think, in a place of saying, hey, we want protections. Now, you know, I don't fault that, but where much of where your money is lost to you is not because of the union, except that, like, in order to keep relevant, And to go with changing times, they keep selling out their members. In other words, the whole notion of a low budget contract, a modified contract, an ultra low budget is so that more people can make movies. But the actors take less money with each of those. So the actor who the union is there to protect is saying, well, you get to take a cut and pay, but hopefully you'll work more. When you've got hundreds of thousands of people in a union, and you may work once a year, instead of getting $1,000 that might have helped you, you get $100. It's a big deal. But it's because they, maybe rightly so or erroneously so, go, I mean, in other words, I know that my union's not going to penalize some producer for not getting my residuals to me, most likely, because they don't want to piss off.
That kind of shit is where the unions are huge.
When the Directors Guild is
follow-up revenue streams, it's one thing they got to pay you before principal photography. It's like getting those residual checks down the line. I mean,
it's worth it.
Yeah. It'd be almost impossible to do without a union.
Right. And I didn't mean to go off on a union tangent other than to say that I think that student filmmakers, if they have a choice between doing a non-union shoot and a union shoot, should opt for the union shoot. It will make them have to not only follow the union rules, but will force them to be creative within those rules. In the hours that they can shoot and the hours that they can't shoot and stuff like that. So it actually hones their filmmaking ability. Then if they choose to go non-union the rest of their life, that's up to them.
Any obstruction is good. It is interesting, though, when you talk about unions and, like, no one owes anybody the ability to make a living as an actor at any rate. You know what I mean? So you're making $100 instead of $1,000, boo fucking who.
Right.
You want to be an actor, not a plumber or whatever. But at the same time, that's why I think, take like an Andrew Yang, not to get all political here, but a universal basic income, that would allow so many more people to be able to do those things.
Sure.
Without there needing to be unions. That's another, you know what I mean? Like a universal basic income, you can get 3 actors living in a house together in a shitty apartment. So they got $36,000 a year coming in. They could make all the fucking movies they want and scrape by as 20-year-olds or whatever, you know, without having to make $1,000 per day at this shoot.
So we need Andrew Yang to inject a little more mediocrity into our country.
Now, the whole point of that, though, is he's literally saying you should be paid for your digital data that people are mining like fucking oil, and you get nothing out of it. So
I think you should be paid for being. I think you should be paid for being a citizen of the country. I think that's a job in and of itself.
Hey, a lot of people think that.
Well, I mean,
Thomas Paine thought that.
Well, I mean, you're here, you're working, you're contributing. Part of
it's saying, do we all own natural resources? It's very fucked up that people could be given a piece of land through hereditary means or whatever, or, you know what I mean? It's just the way that resources are allocated. You got the resource, you got the piece of land, you get the oil. Venezuela is like, hey, we're going to let everybody get paid from the oil we sell. And then what's our response as a country to that? You know, demonize that.
Well, it's like the casinos, you know, the Native American casinos, where the profits are shared to the tribe. I mean, I don't know if they all operate that way, but there are some, and the wealth is distributed, or up in Alaska where the oil rights and the payments and subsidies or whatever. I think that if you're, you know, there's again, this is skewing of our perceptions. I have a theory that there's probably less than 1,000 people, it could be more, that control the world. You know, there's people who control shipping lanes and air flight and oil. There's people who control finances and food.
Oh, hell
there's only a couple companies that distribute your food to the markets and restaurants in this country. So if one of those decides not to, and it's all about the allocation of resources and who has it, and most of the money is being transferred to the ultra wealthy, and there's predatory capitalistic practices that are crushing people left and right. The notion of socialism is being bastardized in ways just because it can be a hot buzzword to scare people. The point is that in my life, I'm not saying that they don't exist. There are some freeloaders out there, but it seems to be a lot of top freeloaders versus a lot of bottom freeloaders. Most of the people I run into every day want to work because they feel productive when they do. They want to provide for their family. They want to, you know, the guy that plowed my yard or my snow, he, you know, 48 hours, and this guy works unbelievably tough. I wouldn't do his job. He does it. He gets out, he shovels, he salts, he does this, he does it all night long. He does it 3-4 days in a row when there's snow. He never stops. He doesn't get any sleep, and he does it to feed his children. He does it to have a lifestyle. You can argue that a CEO may have a corporate vision and that there's a lot of people working under that person, but the disparity in reward between the two, if the guy's not plowing my snow, I'm stuck in the ground. I'm stuck at home. So, why doesn't he get paid just for being a citizen? I mean, he's doing something. Why doesn't the government help subsidize him the way it subsidizes the uber rich? And it's just that
it's either that or the people should be able to collectively bargain against the rich people.
Right.
I mean, we all have cell phones now. I feel like the way the wage gap has risen in the last 30 years, when you look at CEO pay rates skyrocketing and worker pay rates kind of leveling out, that if we didn't have iPhones, we'd all have swords and we'd be cutting their fucking heads off, but we all can play Candy Crush, so we're content. And you talk about the bread and circuses aspect, that bread and circuses is now Grubhub and Pornhub on your fucking phone.
Yeah.
So we're having a hard time, and then they're pitting us against each other with all this identity politics bullshit, etc. Yep. So then we're never going to get this working class revolution. We're too placated, we're too divisive, but really, all working class people need to get together and get that shit, whether it's justified by your data being mined like fucking gold and oil that you get nothing back for it.
There can never be, though, a working class revolution.
Because
the framers, I mean, it's set up to reject that. It's set up to not allow that. The people, the whole idea of this was a few people running shit. You're represented, but you're represented the way they want you to be. It's futile to
yeah, but it doesn't mean we can't evolve beyond that. Like, we have to say, because
then we need to go to another parcel of land. This parcel of land has one way of doing it, which is why, again, like, Bernie Sanders will never be. His socialism isn't over the top extreme psycho shit.
It's not communism. It's not. The state will make every product, and you have to work in whatever job you say.
That word being said out loud by him originally disqualifies him. It's simply not that form of government. He made the mistake of using a word that dummies don't understand, right, and his enemies could easily turn into something else. And they're good ideas, but it's simply not our form of government here. And it's simply not our form of government to allow a working class uprising.
Well, this is true.
The rich own you.
It's definitely rigged against that.
The rich
that's
own
what the reform movement is about.
Anything you're allowed to do down here is, I mean, you want to talk about God, you want to talk about supreme beings. In this kind of the way this country is set up, the government is God.
But that's why you have this.
Well, and we get tricked into again, maybe if we had more.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe
they know where you are and they're listening.
But it's also a distraction. You will never, ever, a house divided. The whole thing is, unless the people unite, you will never, ever be able to. And I'm not advocating it, but you'd never be able to overthrow a government so as long as we're fractionated, as long as you're watching your little Netflix thing and I'm watching my little Amazon thing and you're watching your little thing,
porn,
and we're doing porn, and you're doing it, we will never come together. The benefit of the networks was that there were 3 of them, but you got pretty much the same news in all 3 networks. We were talking about this
yesterday too, yeah.
And everybody, but I mean, it was. I actually preferred those days when I could go into work and everybody watched television last night and they were all talking about Twin Peaks or Gilligan's Island. Now, nobody knows what anybody's
watching. There's so much content. Everyone's got their own niche show. Right.
You aren't old enough, but he is, I imagine. But, there was a time with the 3 networks.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. I grew up with that shit. I was born in 1977, so in the early 80s.
So you're like 42 or so.
Yeah,
right?
40, yeah.
But the point is that, you're probably old. But you were on that edge there.
Totally.
You were. When there was a TV guide, and you had shows.
I used to read that shit.
But you used to know every actor who was in every TV show on television, and you knew who the stars were in all the movies.
We talk about comedians.
Battle of the network stars and shit. They would bring them all together.
But you have no clue how many people are starring in shows and how many shows there are you've never heard of on channels you don't know exist.
Which is good, but it's here's what it is. I remember one of the things I actually liked about the military
9 million versions of a pizza
Yeah.
Right.
How many
When I
can
went-
you eat?
You go to the chow hall in the military, and it was like, what are they serving today? Boom, you ate it. Especially like in boot camp, there
Right.
wasn't any choice,
Right.
and there's kind of a comfort in that. You're like, all right,
Sure.
this is what we're. It's like parents are serving you a fucking meal. This is what's for dinner tonight. Versus staring at this menu with 9,000 fucking options.
Right.
And then every time I go to a restaurant, I don't know about you guys, but I always ham and haw over what the fuck I'm going to order, and then I get it, and whoever is sitting across from me, I always want what they ordered instead of what I fucking
Exactly.
ordered. You know?
Exactly.
But if everyone just gets pork
Right.
and beans
You get
and
what
whatever
you
the fuck
get.
we're
It's
having for dinner.
Tuesday at 7:00. If you put on channel 12, you're watching Happy Days.
Right. And like he said,
If you
it
put on
was so
channel 4, you're watching
communal.
this.
It was so communal that you're like, all right, did you see Cosby Show last night? Did you see fucking
Right.
A-Team last night? Everyone watched the same thing.
Yeah.
Versus now, hey, have you seen that Netflix show? No. What have you been watching? Oh, I've been watching this.
even the president, I mean, some of the networks carry and I'm not saying it's good or bad because depending on who your president is, you may or may not agree. But at one time, the president would be on all 3 channels. There's nothing you could watch.
Right.
You had to watch the president. Now they'll say, well, it's streaming, so we're going to keep our daytime programming going or whatever. So people aren't informed unless they bother to go to a particular. And if you're
Well, and now the news isn't like I got a buddy, Stu Arbery. What's up, Stu? He had just posted, Yang Gang, that I don't know if you saw that thing I put on Facebook. He said it used to be when I was a kid that
excuse me,
it used to be when I was a kid that watching the news was like eating your vegetables. You didn't always want to do it, but it was good for you. And now it's fast food. And he's absolutely fucking right. The Edward R. Murrow thing, the Cronkite, I'm going to give you the news objectively. Then you discuss it at the water cooler, at dinner, etc. Nowadays, it's all opinionated spin.
Oh God,
all of it.
They're
No one just
placating
gives
us
the facts.
so much that we don't. Now it's not just a choice of where you're going to watch the news. It's a choice of what kind of news do you want to receive. If I look at the world in a way that says my MAGA hat looks good on me, and that brown guy needs to get the hell off my lawn,
There's a channel for
I
you.
got a news show for you.
yeah.
And if I want everyone to get $1,000 a month just for shitting, just for polluting the place more,
Data shitting. Get it straight.
I got news I can watch news
Datarrhea.
that's spun that way. You don't even have to have reality anymore, ever. You get a choice for everything.
And it's all bias affirming, etc. You
know what?
And
Yeah.
if you don't like the networks, then you got YouTube.
You spoiled little bastards. If I missed Happy Days on Tuesday night, you know when I got to see that episode? Summer.
Right.
When the fucking reruns came.
Yeah.
Everything's
Until the
immediate.
VHS came out, that helped a little. So people could tape the shows, etc. But then it was like, man, did anybody tape fucking...
Oh, I forgot to set the
Yeah.
VCR.
Exactly.
So you wanted to ask about the commune experience. So
Hell yeah,
I'll
dude.
tell you a little bit about it because
Does this have anything to do with that documentary on Netflix? What was it?
yeah, I'm in that documentary.
Are you?
Yeah.
I gotta
Somebody
watch
called.
that shit.
I watched the thing. I didn't see myself, and somebody called me up and said, "Hey, you're in episode 5.
What's it called again? It was the
Wild
Rage.
Wild Country.
Yes, it was the one where everyone, did you see Wild Wild Country? Oh my God, you got to see it. Now it's Aaron Hernandez was gay.
So, and Mark Duplass, who produced
He's
it.
amazing. Duplass Brothers fucking rule.
Yeah. I thought they did a pretty even-handed. The people who actually did it, and then Mark brought it to the thing. Did a fairly even-handed presentation of what was going on, and they missed an awful
Give
lot.
us the real dirt, as Jack London would say.
So I lived there on and off between 81 and 85 when it ultimately closed down. I was there when all the crap hit the fan and the military came in and the cops came in and everything. We called them in, essentially. I still remain friends with some of the people that were in the...
Wait, for anyone who listens to this who hasn't seen
This
it,
was Rajneeshpuram.
can you give a little background to who the guy was?
So
when
there
the
was
commune
there
started?
was an Indian guru named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh who came to this country from India in 1980, 81. And if we had a large commune in the Lucerne Valley of California. Had we gone there, we'd still be there today. But we chose to go to Oregon, in the central Oregon desert, had 100 square miles of property and reclaimed what was essentially overgrazed property that had no life-sustaining value, and reclaimed it and turned it back into a lush garden, created a 1,200, I think, acre city And all because essentially the county said, if you want to run a commercial enterprise, you need to go to Antelope, which is 19 miles away. It took over an hour to get there because of the winding roads. And buy up property there. And everybody in Antelope, of the 20 people that were there, was putting their property up for sale. So in the Indian tradition, I'm a Swami, and I have a Swami name. But the tradition, Swami Anandito is my name.
That's going to be...
And
today, Michael and Jay sit down with special guests.
Swami Anandito.
Yes.
And I went by Swami Anandito. I did, Swami.
So what is a Swami versus
Swami kind of means it's the idea that you're a lord of yourself. It's a master of yourself, or the goal would be to be a master of yourself. And women would be called a Ma, like Ma.
You were attracted to this because you said you even as a kid were seeking and...
Yeah, I was a meditator.
Right.
And I started to read Bhagwan books in the late 70s or whatever, and I just went, wow, I really resonate with his thoughts and his philosophies. I'd really like to go to India and be with this guy. And I was preparing to go to India when somebody said, stop, he's going to come over here. And I went, okay. And I had spent time in other Indian ashrams here in this country and spent 3 months or 6 months here and been part. But I was very attracted to what Bhagwan, how he spoke about the human condition and about meditation. So the idea of being a sannyasin or a Swami was you would take the Swami name, you would wear a mala, which was beads, 108 beads for the 108 different forms of meditation. You would dress. You would dress.
Even fuck with it.
You would dress in the colors of the rainbow, which would be red or lavender or orange, or that kind of thing. Celebratory, which you see Buddhist monks do, and you would meditate for at least an hour a day. Those were the 4 conditions. Other than that, there were no rules. So the commune was a pioneering event. It was an experiment. It was, could people? This is a city that brought recycling to this country. The first city to
the
recycle.
commune did?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
It was the first debit card in the country, in the world.
Wow.
It was the first.
Is that in the documentary they cover that shit?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that.
I'm just wondering, they might not want to paint it in that light.
I had even forgotten about it. We had a lot of Rajneesh currencies cards where you would put certain money in a bank, and then
if you pissed off the guru, would he freeze your funds?
I don't know. He never did. But the point being was that we were to go to Antelope, get property so that we could run video and audio and produce and publish books and run commercial enterprises on this land that had been zoned for cattle, and it wouldn't sustain 12 head of cattle, in 100 miles. So what happened is we started commercial enterprises in Antelope, and then 60 Minutes came in and said, hey, all these red people from India took over Antelope, and then the crap hit the fan.
So you think it was all racism motivated?
A lot. Well, yeah, a lot of it was go back, burn in hell. There was, the Bhagwan is Satan signs of the people lined up outside the communes or drove through the communes. We were shot at from time to time from the hills.
Damn. What was the percentage of people that were red Indians versus guys like you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There weren't that many. I mean, probably fewer Indians than there were. Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's funny that they would use racism.
Well, people would tell me, they go back to your country. I go, right. Okay, I am. I just did. I would I would go places and not get served food. I was chased out of places with, tire irons.
So were you just rocking robes all day and shit?
No, I mean, I didn't wear robes. I would just wear like blue jeans that were dyed red, or
I've been looking for an excuse to wear a robe around.
Yeah, no, I mean, some people might. But the point was that for me, I would get up every day. I would put on this red clothes, and it was like putting on a clown suit. Like I put on big floppy feet and clown suit and a big red nose, and I would go out. And what it was for me, the whole beads and the whole thing was fascinating because it would stop people. I'd go through the airport and people go, shoot him, kill him. People would scream when I go into malls.
Chicks literally dug it, didn't they?
Huh?
Chicks dug it, didn't they?
Some. But that's
the thing. Who's that mystery guy? Neil Strauss wrote the book.
And people go, are you gay? What's your story?
Right.
The thing was that I looked at it like if somebody could get past the weird outfit and the beads, then they were actually interested in me. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't like the beads or the mala,
fuck him.
And I didn't know, and I got upset about that. Then I was mistaking what they were responding to as a statement about me, not about the clothing or what that represented.
Interesting.
So it became a way for me to monitor: is this about me or is this about something else? Is this my problem or their problem? And it appears it's their problem. Well, if it's their problem, I could do one of two things: I can make it my problem and punch them, or I can make it let it be their problem and not be disturbed by it. So it was a way for me to be more aware and more reflective and more, when you're driving down the road and somebody gives you a finger, the response to give the finger back happens really quickly, but there's actually a gap neurologically between the moment that's triggered and the moment that you react. So if you can learn to take that hair split
That's
second and expand it, mindfulness, then you have a choice to, do I want to do this or not?
I'm going to kick the shit out of them.
And right. But so my point is with the commune, it really was an experiment. Everybody thinks that ashrams are these wonderful places where you're going to live in the hills and meditate and it's all going to be peaceful.
Orgies.
Well, it is, but it isn't. In that when you're in a commune, you're in a microcosm of the real world. So any button that could get pushed would get pushed. I want to be with this girl. She doesn't want to be with me, or she wants to be with me. And people would say, well, you're a sex cult, right? Because you're, and we had a lake and we had nude swimming at this lake.
It's like America's a sex cult.
But people would drive. Well, this is what people don't get. So there was a nude thing, and then after a while, the city said, "Well, we're going to close it because people are complaining as they drive through because the city had a state road that ran through it. So they drive by, they see naked people, 400 yards away,
and then they get jealous and bitchy about it.
Well, they would complain and bitch and whatever, and so they said, we don't want to offend people, so we'll move it to a place that they can't see, and people say, well, you're a sex cult, and it was this. They'd say, what are the rules about sex in your commune? We go, there are no rules. What do you mean there are no rules? Okay, well, this is a city, first off. It's a legitimate city. There's a mayor. There's police force. They're Oregon State trained. We have the third largest transportation system in the state of Oregon.
Are the cops wearing beads?
Yep.
Wow.
That's trippy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And
what was the transportation like?
Bus. It was like school buses mostly, and there were some cars and other vehicles, but mostly we lived in A-frames. Like we lived in hotels. We lived in apartment buildings. We lived in tents during the festival time when there were 20 or 30,000 people there. It was truly
it's so crazy. You were at the spot. There was this huge documentary about.
It was beautiful. It was totally beautiful. Then toward the end, one of the people there who I knew very casually, and some of the other people. Sheila, was alleged to have committed a bunch of problems. And I was there when she got off in her plane and flew away. And
what were the problems? I didn't watch the doc. Like I said, does it devolve to murders and shit? Or is it
there was allegedly there was an attempted murder. There was attempt to poison a salad bar or salmonella, a couple of politicians. What happened?
So like typical city shit, though. Like every city has.
Well, this is it. You're so right on. Every city has crime. Every city has abuses. Every city has sex. Everything.
So
this is no different. This is no different than Salt Lake City or Boston. I mean, this was a city that was predominantly people who were of a particular spiritual persuasion. They wore a particular set of clothes. So everybody said, well, they're all cult members. They're all zombies. They all in service of this guru, and they'll lay their lives down.
The dressing and uniformity is part of it, I think. If everybody in Milwaukee wore a uniform.
You didn't have to wear the same clothes. You wore the same color, just like Buddhist monks. Now, Buddhist monks tend to be more uniform than we were.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying I can see to the outsider.
Okay, but wait.
But you belong to the blue jean cult.
Right.
Or the brown shirt cult or the green shirt cult.
Did I wear sweatpants now?
What were you going to say, Mike?
Right. Okay, you were I think you were arguing that they shut this whole city down based on a smaller version of what happens in every city, and that's unfair.
Were some.
Here's the problem, though. You just used a Buddhist cult or whatever, a Buddhist, any of those religious orders where they're all you compared it to dressing like that. If the cops in your city and the mayor of your city all dress alike, it's not a city. It's a movement.
Well, it was a movement, but it's the same time.
So it doesn't get to enjoy
city plus
the hands off.
But here's what I said.
For responsibility of a city.
But here's what I said. You and I, the only difference between you and me would be that the clothes I'm wearing right now would be red instead of blue or orange or green or whatever.
It's like Crips and Bloods.
Well, it is for you. It wasn't for us. In other words, here's the thing. The conditions of sannyas were you take a name, you wear some beads, you wear some clothes, and you meditate an hour a day. That was it. as far as the rest of the rules, it was up for you to use your own moral compass and conscience. As far as the city went, there was no crime in the city, at least up front. There were no drugs allowed in the city, so you guys wouldn't be in.
Oh, that was my next question.
Yeah, no. So that was outlawed. There were bars, there were discotheques, there were clothing stores, there were bookstores, there was television, there were meditation halls, there was a university, it was like a city.
It's almost like a military base, like a
you could say that. Now, the goal of this place was to meditate and was to say, can we reclaim this and in this kind of a social experience? So we had people who wrote books on it. They would fly in, anthropologists, sociologists, psychologists, everybody else would go, the kids here are really well adjusted and happy. The school program is great. They're recycling. They're reclaiming the land. All this great stuff is happening. Now, during that time, there were some problems that arose, and most of the problems were an us versus them thing. It was an inside, outside, whether we caused it or they caused it, or whether it was a combination of both. I do know this, that toward the end, military jets were swooping down into the valley. I would come out of meditation.
That's crazy.
They would come swooping down overhead, and they would deny that there was any jet there. I would watch Ted Koppel at nighttime. We were talking about TV. This was when CNN, and this is why CNN came up. And at the time, I saved every newspaper from the city. I had people collecting newspapers, and I did, from all around the country regarding the commune and what was going on. I collected every videotape I could of news things, and I was going to write a book, and I didn't, and to this day I kind of regret that.
Now it'd probably be a bestseller after the doc.
Well, yeah, but the point of the book was how, if your story appears above the fold or below the fold, how does that impact you? If you have a picture of this guy next to Charlie Manson, how does that affect you? So where do you assign meaning, and how does the media?
Charles Manson.
How does the media influence your decision? If you have two papers, like you did in Milwaukee at one time, the Journal and Sentinel, if they all print the same stuff, it's not much different. But if they're opposite ends of the spectrum, well, then you've got a little bit more freedom of choice, because as long as you read both of them. If you only read one of them, then you're filling that niche, which is the same today. So there were a lot of things not right about the city, in the sense that, it did have its own kind of blinders on, and there was but the goal was to meditate and to live happily and successfully. And where I think a lot of problem happened is a lot of very wealthy people said, I don't want to live this way anymore. The woman who produced The Godfather, I can't think of her name, was one of the people who lived. There were very successful people from around the world that lived there. And they just went, I don't want to play the corporate 9-to-5 game anymore. I want to live like a king and eat in a communal center, really good food that we've all organic.
But then after a while, the romance and allure of that wore off on them?
No, not on the city.
Oh, I thought you were saying some
what
of those
happened.
people...
What happened was the confluence, the oppositions from the outside. I think the stress of the person who was managing the commune got to it, and they started to do things to get back at people or to preempt
just
things.
Petty human shit.
It's just the petty human shit that happens in any city. But when she left, then they found out that money was missing and that certain crimes had been done and everything else. So then we called for an investigation, called for news things. So then the cops came in. They never found any of the alleged stuff.
So the main dude, what's his name again?
Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh.
Was he totally on the level, or was he like fucking all the chicks, like Jim Jones?
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's not why I was there. I was there for me, not to.
I just didn't know if some of that comes out a lot of times, because people have these preconceived notions of quote unquote cults, because so many of them do ends up being revealed have this megalomaniac leader who's fucking all the chicks.
Well, you also have to remember the time.
David Koresh and the Branch Davidians.
So I'm gonna liken it to David Koresh in a second. We were on the heels of Jonestown, so we were the next big movement after Jonestown. So everything was compared. Everything we were bad because of Jonestown, and Leo Ryan's daughter lived with us, and so they were like, "How can the daughter of the slain, congressman be a cult member?" So that was one question.
Shit.
But David Koresh, when that thing happened, it was not unlike what was going on for us in some ways, except we ended with a whimper. Nothing happened.
You didn't amass a bunch of weapons. That's why, right?
Well, they said we did, and they said, "Oh, there's all this stockpiling. We're all armed." And this is what I was saying. I'd come out of I'd watch Ted Koppel. They're all ready to die. They're all armed. They're ready to die. And I'm like looking around, going, "You talking about me?"
That's crazy. That would be chilling.
Do you know what the announcements were in the city when there were all these cops and everything?
Dude, I'm frolicking naked. What the fuck are you talking about?
Here's the announcements that were being broadcast, multiple times throughout the day. If they come for Bhagwan, let him go. It's not your problem. Don't sit down. Don't strike. Don't wail. Don't do anything. Let him go. It's between him and the authorities.
Good
let
leadership.
him go. Meanwhile, just do what you do. Live, love, laugh, celebrate, have a good time, and keep $10 on you because you'll need it to buy a toothbrush in jail if they arrest you, and keep your driver's license on you because you'll need an ID. But do not get involved. Do not do anything to provoke anyone. Just let it go. It's Bhagwan's problem, not yours.
Are you saying we have all of you to blame for that fucking live, laugh, love thing now?
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, I don't know, but the point being is that it was,
Every divorced woman over 40 has that on her
Yes.
fucking wall.
the cool thing about this thing was I'm walking around. There's
That's their uniform.
FBI everywhere. There's cops everywhere. They're sitting in Bhagwan's thing, meditate, this, that, and the other thing. If he talked about the government, they would write it down. If he talked about meditation, they didn't care. They came in to investigate. They found evidence of certain crimes that was after the fact, essentially, because the people had left who were committing them.
Turn over any rock, you're going to find some shit.
Well, right, you're going to find it. But whether Bhagwan was involved or not, I don't care. That's not my business. I wasn't there to pay homage to Bhagwan. I was there to find my own light. He just happened to be the figurehead of the place who spoke about meditation, and I liked his words. Were there other people who thought he might be a god or a deity? Probably.
Do you think if it never collapsed, you'd still be there?
Huh?
You think if it never collapsed, you'd still be
I
there?
came and went all the time. And see, this was the other thing. They always said, well, they take all your money. They have to give it to the guru. You can't come and go. I came and went. I never gave them a dime. Nobody ever asked me for a donation.
But to have your, okay, all right. So it's a city,
It's a city.
right?
It's like
What kind
a city.
okay. What kind of taxes was everybody paying in the city?
I don't know. They paid all the taxes. I didn't pay any taxes.
You didn't pay any. You lived there for free.
I paid whatever Oregon state tax was.
Just state tax. You didn't pay it.
Did you
didn't
pay
a
rent?
City tax.
Yes.
Yeah, so you paid to live at least. It's not like you just go there and live in it.
Or I could exchange. I could go and I could say, okay.
So they had like a barter system?
Yeah, they had where you could work and then you
Like
could work for
hand
X
jobs
amount of
for
hours a day and then you got your meals in your room.
Mm.
And they had a university. I went to the
Which
university.
is fair. That's kind of fair, though. You should be able to exchange labor for goods.
And the other cool part about it is you could choose what you wanted. You could choose what you wanted to do. You could say, I'd like to garden. I've never done that. Put you in the garden. Say, I'd like to learn plumbing. I'd like to learn electronics.
It is romantic, man. And have you read that Sebastian Younger book, Tribe? I just read that a little bit ago. Thanks, Sydney. You sent it to me. Yeah, the whole thing is about how out of whack we are with our natural tribal existence, where there's just too many fucking people living in cities. So then you get this anonymity, and with anonymity comes crime and all these other nasty things, bullying, etc. That we max out. I can't remember if it was 80 to 160 people. Like once you have that is like the breaking point of everyone feeling like a vital part of the community. And once you have these people who become castaways or they fall through the cracks, that's when you get all these societal problems.
Well, I'm going to venture something.
So it's almost like if we all lived in little pocket communes, it'd be a lot more peaceful.
So I'm going to venture something. I don't know how Milwaukee started or Los Angeles started. I mean, you can trace the histories. But you can see that Boston's primarily Catholic. You can see that, Salt Lake is primarily Mormon. However, Boston is not now just Catholic. All sorts of people live there. Had the city lived and survived, my guess is that all sorts of different people would be there.
Right.
The people who were living there up front were pioneers creating a city so that they could be an example.
That's probably what threatened them, though. The status quo was threatened.
Oh, totally.
It wasn't
Ed Meese and everybody. It was
industrial
Reagan and Ed Meese. George Bush Sr. said, the Rajneesh people are the nicest people I ever met. Meese and Reagan were like, get them the heck out of the country. And when the thing collapsed, they were like, don't let Bhagwan land in any country. And they started pulling in all these favors. So the guy flew around and around and around trying, and finally ended up back in Nepal and then back in India. And then, he died in 1990. And, but for me, it was an incredible experience. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. I knew so many different people. I could go anywhere in the world. I had instant home, instant camaraderie.
Did you fall in love with anyone there?
Oh yeah, and
Like several
throughout the years, yeah, and inside and out. I mean, we had a center in Laguna, which was wonderful. I'd go every weekend if I wasn't in the city. We had one in Westwood. There were Rajneesh discotheques and Zorba the Buddha restaurants all around the world. It was a commercial. It was like a social.
You should write a movie about that shit, dude.
Well,
It's got IP now, even.
Many years ago, I was going to, and people have told me, "Oh, you should write a book. You should make a movie." Somebody wanted to make a movie about my experience, and then it didn't come through. Anything is possible. I was kind of shocked when Wild Wild Country came up, because it was so, like, I felt it was a non-issue. Now, when Koresh happened, people would say, "What do you think about that?" And I go, "I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know." And
Well, you mean like the only real rational response no one gives ever?
Well, but this goes back to the CNN thing. CNN rose because they had a 24/7 news cycle. They had profit. They had to do it. They became an opinion show. I would watch and they go, "Oh, and he has how many Rolls Royces?" And I go, "That's not news. The way you're inflecting, the way you wink your eye, the way you do, what? This is all how news started to shift. You started to see, instead of Edward R. Murrow going, and that's the news, you started to see opinion being, there's this rich guru living in India. What do you think of that kind of stuff? What was supposed to be in the headline.
More performative to get ratings with cable competition.
Everything was changing and evolving. In theory, the hard news, which is not Ted Koppel, that was, another nighttime opinion show kind of disguised as
like
news.
Hard copy type shit. Yeah.
Well, not as egregious, as hard copy.
Affair.
Basically, like every news show that's on
right
now.
But what I'm getting at is I would be there when we were being, swooped in by this. I was there when the cops, I was there when they were on news watching them talk about me, going, they're all armed and they're all willing to lay down their lives. And I'm going, I don't know a single one of us who's armed and willing to lay down our lives. Who the heck are you talking about? So when Koresh happened and people go, they're all cult members and they're all armed, I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what's going on inside that compound. Maybe that is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if it were.
Dude, I remember I was in high school and my brother's friend brought over like this VHS tape, that Waco tape that made the rounds.
Right.
Did either of you remember that shit? Right. Seeing the ATF, this is a dynamic entry, and just outlining how it was a siege and everything. It was crazy.
Well, what the whole thing did to me was it kind of opened my eyes. It made me go, you know what? We were trying to live, I thought, a good life, and we were very much persecuted. It made me sensitive to people of color and gender issues that I probably wouldn't have been otherwise by putting on my clown suit, because I knew, and I was going to do a TED Talk on this, but I wrote an article instead. But I knew I could take that off. I never did. For 5 years, I wore it religiously.
You had the luxury of choosing.
I could take it off. They could chase me into a gas station. I could go into the restroom, change my clothes, come out in blue jeans. They wouldn't know I was the same person who ran in red clothes. A black person can't do that. An Asian can't do that.
Except you were stinking of patchouli.
And pig night at the old bun. Anyway, so it made me aware of so many different aspects about our culture, about what our country, about what U.S. values and doesn't value. We came as pioneers. We said, hey, we're going to go out. We're going to create these cities. And the people who did came over as religious cults and, pilgrims and whatever, and did this stuff. But now in the 80s, it was that's not cool. You can't do that now. Yes, we could do that 200 years earlier, but not today. So, it made me aware of a lot of stuff. It made me aware of boundaries, national boundaries, patriotism, it sounds super transformative. That's what I'm saying. I could see a movie not nearly as deviant as this, but I love movies that are kind of like Jesus' Son. You ever see that flick with Billy Crudup? Where you're just kind of, somebody's just moving through life almost passively. Not to say you were, but I could see a character in a movie who's kind of listless in Los Angeles, and kind of maybe this even Bret Easton Ellis type scene of some debauchery, etc., and just wants a change, and he finds this movement. He ends up going to this commune and falling in love with several women, and you got a built-in end where the whole thing just collapses. And it's like, oh, well, that was fun while it lasted. What the fuck? It's a pretty trippy experience, man. And it goes back to
dark and sad.
That's how I'd make it. That's how I make shit. I mean, you could make it Cameron Crowe style.
For everything that I say good about it, somebody could probably find something bad about it. For everything somebody says
like
bad
you'd say about any city.
Well, right. I could probably find something good about it. My thing is, it is what it is. It is what it was. It was, for me, a very eye-opening experience and a wonderful transformative experience. I was there in the beauty of nature, surrounded by people who
That's huge.
go
Getting out of that city to go to nature.
well, and people who really wanted to meditate and be peaceful and to enjoy life. And it's funny that in doing that, we ended up with some, counter to it. Like I said, the people literally, they shot the sheriff's horse, for crying out loud,
That kind of goes to my point to circle all this back. First off, two things. You were saying, who was it, the naturalist that...
John Burroughs?
Yes, he was the one who had gone for peace.
Right.
So he found something more important maybe than happiness. But circling all the way back, just saying that it's hard to think positively because the misery... Look, you guys put it into action. You personified thinking positively, living in this commune, and that negativity came to fucking get you and collapsed it all.
Well, Einstein said
nihilism and pessimism, totally viable if you ask me.
Well, Einstein said, great spirits must do violent contention with mediocre minds. That's something he's known for. And there's the phrase, the kite rises highest against the wind. I mean, without challenge, your muscles don't grow without some form of resistance. So, when there is resistance and you're challenged, it gives you the opportunity to sink or to swim or to learn something from it or to do both or to do any number of things, What most people do is fall back on their conditioning. And if their conditioning is negative or violent, then that's probably what they're going to do. If it's
just that
positive.
The commune itself couldn't fight back in any winning way ever. You could each individually disperse and find paths to personal happiness, but as a group, you're fucked because it's Jack London's iron heel. You were going to be ground under the governmental heel once you were targeted.
I mean, we also did something that, in my estimation, was silly. We went to Oregon. Oregon was not the, California, the Lucerne Desert. We'd been in Lucerne Desert for years, and nobody gave a crap.
And you went just because people were complaining about nudity?
No. I mean,
that was later.
They were looking for a place where we could do this, and they decided rather than going to a place that was pre-existing, they would buy property up in Oregon, and it was, really probably a good price or whatever because it was horrible land. I mean,
but the people living there, not at all.
They were not at all.
Oregon
has been trying to go, hey, we're pot people for 20, 40 years or something like that. We're like, get these people out of here. It was, I'd better be slogans. I'd rather be dead than red.
Right. You got the Clive and Bundy types up there, all kinds of militia types and shit.
How long did this last?
I'm going to tell you it this way. I was getting ready to leave, and I was driving back to Los Angeles by way of San Francisco down the coast with a Swami from Germany and a Ma from Holland. And she came and lived with me for 3 or 6 months or something, an incredible woman. And it was probably 81. And he and I were standing by the car waiting for her to come. And he goes, I give this 4 years. I go, what? He goes, 4 years. And I go, 4 years what? He goes, your government won't let this last for more than 4 years. And I'm like,
Nailed it.
Wow. No, he truly did. But I'm like, wow, you're Debbie Downer kind of thing. What do you mean? Have faith. This could last forever. He goes, he's like, your government, he's a German, he's like from outside the system. He's like, they will never let this last. 4 years to the date almost. It was
like, look what they did to us.
I mean, he was prescient, if anything. And I was like, no, this is cool. This will last.
Were there parking tickets?
Difference.
Damn.
I mean, there. I mean, you could.
Otherwise, it sounds like paradise.
I watched.
Parking tickets can turn paradise to hell.
The difference between this was somebody gets drunk in a discotheque, the cops would come, and they would walk them home. Go, hey, you'll be okay. Don't worry
I talk about that a lot in On the Road. Jack Kerouac talks about that moment where him and Dean Moriarty, whatever, the fuck was his name? Neil Cassidy is his real name, right? They just jumped in this car and they're like, we're going to drive south as far as we fucking can. So the car dies or we get stuck or whatever. So they make it midway through Mexico. They're in this jungle. They were trying to get to fucking Chile or something, right? So they make it midway through Mexico and they either run out of gas or they just need to sleep for the night. So they just pull up on this dirt road near some village. And one of them sleeps on the hood of the car and the other one sleeps in the car. And then the sheriff comes up in the middle of the night. This little lantern and shit, and they're like, oh man, we're fucked, whatever. And they didn't speak his language or anything, but just through body language, you guys all right? Yeah, we're cool. All right, just checking. Left. He's like, in America, we would have been thrown in the fucking drunk tank, vagrants, loitering, the cops would have been up our ass. fines.
I was in a car accident. I was abused by cops because I was wearing red and beads, and I happened to have a letter in my car with the Swami and Nito in it. And they go, "Oh, he's a cult member." They treated me horribly, but
I mean, we so need cops, but such dicks are attracted to the job.
Yeah.
Hey, I was a movie usher. That's the pathway to
That's
them.
kind of like, that seems like a first step.
Yeah, start as a home
That's a
monitor.
gateway job.
But that's what's funny. Well, I mean, it's funny, but that's what this guy told me. He said, "Yeah, you're on your way to being a cop. You got a flashlight, and it's like having a badge and a gun. You know, you're going around."
A little taste of power.
In those days, I'm at the Egyptian theater, right? You know, it's like Towering Inferno. You know, these big movies and stuff. And we had to go around, and go shh, quiet, or we'll kick you out. Get your feet off the seats. We didn't have phones to deal with or anything like that, but it was just like mini Gestapo. We were taught we had to preserve the environment. So you walk around going, shh, shh, shh,
Oh, God.
quiet. You know, get your feet down, get your feet. You want to get out of here? You want to be kicked out of here? Get it. You know,
Growing up, I got yelled at so much.
So
by
like the
ushers.
usher with the
By
flashlight.
movie ushers, right?
Yeah.
He's like more distracting than anyone talking in the theater.
Right.
Hey, take your feet off that seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
Or you're
Yeah,
like
chill
making
out.
out with some chick, and he's jealous about it. So
It
he's
could
like,
be.
stop.
But yeah, I mean, so anyway, you know,
movie
I
ushers.
met a cop the other day. I was at the dog park with the dogs.
Do you ask every cop if they were a movie usher?
No, but I met this guy. He pulled up. We had about an hour conversation. He was like on break, and he had dogs. I had dogs. We talked. It was a great time. He'd moved here from Texas and said, it's a lot easier up here than getting shot at every day in Texas. And I'm like, I saw another policeman the other day. I was at a market, and I said, "Hey, do you know so and so?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I haven't seen him." I said, "I met him one day at the dog park." He said, "Oh, that's because he works third shift." I said, "Well, that makes sense." I said, "Would you say hi from the guy with the dogs kind of thing?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, sure." I mean, there are wonderful policemen and they're wonderful people.
That dumbass Barney Fife cop that you had that conversation with in that story is lucky you weren't a guy with a vendetta against this guy.
Well, this is
wanting
true,
to
too.
know when he worked. What the fuck are you telling people
Here's
personal
a
shit
private eye
about
comes
a
out.
cop?
Yes, I love it.
This guy needs to have his badge taken away, whoever this guy was.
Well, yeah, we could go there.
Oh, yeah, he lives right over there on 84th Street.
Oh, yeah, but and I learned a
This
lesson.
is where he gets his donuts at
His
2:20
wife's
a.m.
name
every day.
Linda.
But
Jesus.
you're right. And I tried to instill that in my children and in everybody I know. I was, again, 18, and I hung out with this choreographer in L.A., and I always thought he was after me body-wise, but he was like Carlos
You wanted
Castaneda.
your soul and your mind instead.
Yeah, but he terrified me because he was always talking about life and giving and things, and I always said he meant give me something, and he didn't.
Right. Giving head.
Yeah, but he didn't. But that's what I read into it, and so I would get close to him, not physically, but I would get or he would say hug me,
Hey,
and
man, this is a no judgment zone.
right. But
Despite
we
the
would
cactus
we
jack
would walk
mask
down
and
the street because he said, well, if you want to learn to dance, I'll give you free dance lessons, and he was a well-known choreographer. And so that was one alert. But at any rate, so we would walk from the we would walk
That
from
he was a
this-
choreographer,
but
period.
but we would walk from this restaurant to the dance studio, and he'd say, "So what's different today?" And I go, "What do you mean what's different?" He goes, "Well, look around." And I go, "I don't know." He go, "Well, it's a completely different day." And I go, "So what? There's different cars on Ventura Boulevard?" And he go, "No, you have your head so far up the rectal canal that you don't know what's going on."
Another-
Always straight to the rectum.
Another little sly.
He was a sly choreographer.
But this guy,
Dude had moves.
he scared me. But he was like this mystic. He was a meditator. He's very zen. And
I mean, everyone needs people like that in our lives. That's what I'm talking about. We need all types. We need our worker bee drones, but
Right.
then we need people to expand their minds. We need mushrooms people to expand our minds.
So right, I mean we do, and if you're blessed, and oftentimes, like you talked about opportunities earlier, oftentimes the opportunities that people come to us we don't recognize because we have our own blinders on that we don't see them, or we think they're weird or they're creepy or whatever. People ask me about the city of Rajneeshpuram or what they thought, and I go, I don't know.
Couldn't have lived there
I
just
don't know.
because I could never said the name. All the names, I would have fucked the names up so much it would have kicked me out.
But my point is people will ask me to make a collective decision for thousands of people and say, what was the city about? I go, I don't fucking know. It was what it was for me was this. What was your experience? My experience was this. It might have been completely different for somebody else.
Cool.
Somebody else might have been
How old were you then?
between probably 25 and 30.
That's pretty cool.
And there's no drugs there. So everyone who's there is there just
There was no way sneaking.
Clear-headed and-
There was alcohol and coffee.
Wow.
But nobody was like sneaking bowls in and smoking weed.
If they got caught sneaking bowls, then they were asked to leave. They were confiscated and they were asked to leave. And people who came to the city wanted to be in the city. They didn't want to get asked to leave. So most people, respected it. Whether there were people
who left the premise and did it or whatever.
Well, or whether there was people in there that were sneaking it in and didn't get caught. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I never encountered any.
They carried it in their rectal cavities.
Huh?
Well, like a choreographer.
Callback.
They may have. But I started the choreographer story for a reason, and now I don't remember what it was. Oh,
by the way, I don't know about you guys, but we can go for 5 hours if you want.
Well, we could go longer.
Go.
I'm good with that. I'm going to need to make a phone call in a little bit, but
right. I don't know if you got to leave.
No, but I do need to make a phone call because at any rate, I'm in the choreographer's office. And it's down at the end of the hall, and this guy shows up. You know where so-and-so is, this girl. And I said, oh, yeah, she's down in Studio C. And the guy walked off. And this choreographer who's always been calm and, I mean, I've never seen him get mad go, what the F do you say to her? Why would you do that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you just told him where this woman was. And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, how do you know who he is? Who is he to her?
The cop shit.
Yeah, exactly. Boom. I mean, he was like, why would you ever do that? I go, well, because he asked. Is that why you did? You're like a robot. You have to throw out this answer. And I was like,
fuck this, I'm moving to a commune.
Well, it truly made an impression on me that there's certain amounts of information you don't ever have to provide anyone, like where you are, when you are. My kids, I'm like, you don't have to tell people I'm here. Don't post it on Facebook that I'm there, especially if you're a girl. Oh, hey, I'm going to be at Bob's Big Boy at 2:00 this evening, all by myself. Come and say hi.
There's a clip online. I love to watch those shitty customers in stores videos, compilations.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're screaming at people. And there's one where there's this guy in a video store, like a video game store, and he's unhappy with the manager, who's a female, and he wants her name because he's calling corporate, and he wants her last name.
Interesting.
And she's like, yeah, no. I was like, I should get your last, and all these people.
How street smart and wise though. It's like no.
Yeah,
a lot of
no, you're not having my last name. And like I have business cards for work that have my cell phone number on them. Which, if you spend 3 minutes online, if you have someone's cell phone number, you can know where they live.
Right.
Unless it's like some throwaway burner ghetto phone kind of thing.
Maybe you should have.
Maybe. But I have Sprint. And Sprint will tell you where I live if you look at my phone number. And these kids will just like give it out to drunk customers and shit. I gave your card to this group. They were pissed.
Oh wow! Thank you.
No, those cards are for like corporate kind of. It's like it's. I'm paranoid.
That's the trade-off. Like, yeah, you should have a work phone. Fuck that.
Yeah, I'm paranoid about it. I can't imagine like giving away like that guy, the cop guy. Oh my god, I'm still pissed about the cop telling.
All he said was he
works shift. That's all you need to know.
Well, it's true.
I know, and you could go either way. Like maybe it's the actor in you. I could see you totally being a nice guy, or you could.
Well, what's funny is I walked up to him, and I got to his window, and I started to kind of like knock because he was filling out.
He's like, oh!
And he rolled it down, and I said, "I'm not going to make any jokes about license and registration." And he looked at me like, "What?" I said, "Hey," I'm like, at that moment, I was being stupid. So, and it's not It's not the first time.
For all I know, this guy, you could have wanted to kill this guy's dog.
True.
For all this guy knew.
True.
It is crazy as far as
his dog bit my
informational
dog
security.
at the dog
Well, but
park.
see, this is your background.
I'm just suspicious.
But I mean, also
you're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I mean,
that other cop, if he said, "Hey, that guy said," that guy could have been like, "Shit."
Well, and the cop could have gone, "Really? You told him on that shift?
Exactly.
How dare
That's what I'm
you?"
Yeah.
Now
or he's going through a divorce, or he's going through a divorce, and you're a PI who works for his wife's lawyer, or what something. Yeah. You don't know who the fuck is.
So if this conversation helps people understand that they need not blurt out things, keep them and their family and loved ones safe, more power to them.
Right.
Exactly.
Time out.
Yeah. Let me just make a call and find out why.
I gotta pee.
I just kind of get sad when, like acting wise, I get sad when a movie wraps.
I do too.
Because
Blues.
all the way through shooting, working with a character, I always think of all different possibilities. I imagine different lives for the character and different circumstances for the character and different situations they could get in potentially. It's depressing ending a movie and you're like, oh, well, that guy's dead now. I guess.
It's like you're forced into dissociative identity disorder, but you're having to commit suicide with these identities you create almost.
Right. I would love to work a character arc as on a series. That sounds like the best.
Go for
Do you remember that show Black Adder?
Like I envy Bryan Cranston so much for what he got to do on Breaking Bad. That's just
especially being out of character for what he was known for and shit. That's so cool.
Yeah.
To go against type, you know. Well, no, the Black Adder thing though, being the whole conceit of that show was each season it reset to a different setting and all the same cast stayed, right?
American Horror Story?
Yeah, they do it too, kind of anthology style. But what if you did something per episode? If you play an actor, each episode he could be acting in something. It's kind of like Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Even if you did something local, there could be all these shitty local movies you're in, you know what I mean? With these amateur non-SAG, shitty, student films, etc. Some actor. It would be a good web series, I think, for a local thing.
Like that's a side.
You get to play a different character every time while being the same guy.
That's kind of a side story for one of the characters in.
Oh yeah, because they're like has-been actors. One's trying to work his way back.
Yeah, so we see him on these garbage,
love it,
movie sets and stuff like that, and yeah.
Then he scores the role of a lifetime in Cactus Jack, and we inject that into the show and use footage we shot.
Yeah.
So ours, whenever this comes around, I want to correct the Cactus Jack reference and say Peter Schrager was Texas Jack Vermillion in Tombstone.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it wasn't Cactus Jack, it was Texas Jack.
Texas Jack.
I can just put that in here. I'm recording again.
So my correction is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we will now be turning the title of our film to Texas Jack, by the way.
Yeah. By the way, since we're on air and such, I'm gonna ask you something that you'll be held to, because
when are we releasing it?
All 11 of the listening people.
Chris is cutting it and scoring it right now. So
right now,
your brother?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
He's in Cali.
He still is. He's still in Orange County.
Yeah, he's in Orange County. He's in Fullerton now.
Oh, okay.
Actually, yeah, I wanted to talk about some of that with you. Like, I never really hung out with you the whole time I've been here,
Right.
but he had that night at the Dakota Lounge with you.
God.
I think, did you remember ever hanging out with him?
Yeah.
He said you guys hung out one night at the Dakota Lounge when you were in Cali one time, and Bruno Mars was playing, and he was like a nobody then. It was like before he blew up. So you got Bruno Mars there, and then you were hanging out with Zach Ward, I guess.
Zach Ward, right, yeah.
He was the bully in A Christmas Story.
oh my God.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah, he was the he's also in Tombstone.
Yes,
In
or the movie.
Deadwood.
No, in Deadwood? Zach
yeah,
Ward
he
what?
plays. I think it's season 2, like episode 3. I don't know why I kind of remember this 3 or 4, but he appears. I think he's got 2 episodes. I only remember 1, but he comes in as like a dishwasher or something, and then has some.
That's awesome.
Thing, and I'm like, oh, there's Zach. Zach did the movie Postal with Uwe Boll. Did you ever see Postal?
I've never watched it. It's on my list. I gotta watch that shit. But
What's your Uwe Boll opinions?
Close us out with an Uwe Boll.
He knows him.
Yeah, he's a friend. I love Uwe. Uwe's a friend. People, either love him or hate him, and I love him. And Postal, I thought, was incredible. And it was very sad because originally he had something like 1,500 theaters and it went down to like 11, because of the opening scene that he refused to edit.
Which was like a workplace shooting or what?
No, it was a after 9/11, and it was a couple of Arabs flying a plane, and they accidentally hit the towers.
Accidentally?
Well,
that's fucking hilarious.
And people wanted it cut.
Damn,
like
people are pussies. This is why we talk so much shit, because people are pussies, and they need to be reconditioned out of that.
I'm all here. I'll give you. I'm all for being sensitive to somebody else.
Agreed.
And I'm all for being able to say anything and having somebody have enough thick skin to not get bent out of shape over it.
Well, you talked a lot with the positive thinking thing about not adopting victimhood as your posture. And to me, we've like had made rape jokes, and I've defended making rape jokes even on this podcast. But part of that is that's cathartic for a lot of people who experienced rape. I know people who are raped who make fucking awesome rape jokes. It's part of their catharsis. It's how they own it instead of being a victim. So it's kind of fucked up for someone who hasn't done the work like you're saying they should do to not be a victim, to say I'm triggered so no one can have this form of catharsis even.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I don't know when
we couldn't let a episode pass without me defending rape jokes.
For real, man.
But what I mean.
I just use rape because it's the most extreme. But what I mean is obnoxious, foul, like dead kid humor, etc. You know what I mean? Everything triggers somebody because the world is full of misery. I can make a joke about bullying. I can make a joke about a guy with one arm pulling somebody's fucking nipple with his hook hand, and nobody's going to bitch about it.
Yeah.
So fuck off.
But I'm the victim here.
Right.
A guy did that to me in high school.
Willis T. Etz the third.
Oh, a one-armed guy with a hook hand.
And it was a locking.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And he used to have one guy hold me down from this side, one guy hold me down from that side. And he'd put it on my nipple, lock
I
it,
bet that hurt.
and then take it off.
Oh.
And it would be...
Hanging off your nipple?
Yeah.
This is some Tarantino shit.
Yeah.
Really?
So now one of the kids who
You want to
works for
save
me...
that for an episode. You don't want to give that away either.
This was 40 years ago.
We had a whole episode about this. We have a plan to
there's
get his arm.
One of the
put
kids
it
who
in
works
here.
for me found him.
Oh, Lord.
He
works,
says serendipitously, but I have a theory that this kid sought him out to please the
I
cop
believe
lord.
you're right. I believe you're right.
Good third shifter, right?
Perfect.
So I'm sending my employees, cult members, whatever you want to call them, to
He's pulling
go
a Manson and sending the
and
Manson
steal
girls
his
to put
arm
the
for me from the Walgreens. There he works.
Pretty scary. The headlines the next day: man's arm stolen by teammate.
Good.
And
I'll turn myself in because I want to tell my story.
It'll be great though. It'll be like the kids with the MAGA hats and the native guy. How it all went to shit. Where everyone's immediately like, "Oh my god, somebody stole a fucking guy with one arm. What a piece of shit!" And then they find out, oh, he used the arm to bully the guy. So the whole victim narrative gets switched up.
Exactly.
Perfect.
This is my origin story.
Yes. M. Night Shyamalan's going to make the movie of your life.
Oh, that would be cool.
And
Wouldn't
the
it?
twist ending is I died. I
lose your arm.
I was stillborn the whole time.
Yeah, right.
None of it happened.
Anyway,
How do you want to close it?
How do you want to close?
bye, bitches. The end.
I don't have to leave. I mean, you guys don't. I have to.
You
go.
gotta leave, right?
But
no, we'll do another one sometime.
Yeah,
you could go pick up your kid, and Rex could just carry it.
Yeah, I don't gotta get him till 6 today.
Rifting.
But
I'd be rifting.
yeah, he could just be talking. I get what you're saying. No, we'll call this one. Do you got any plugs or anything you want to shit on Wisconsin film incentives one time before you get out of here?
Do I want to?
Or a lack of it? I mean, here, why don't you close us out with an appeal to the state
All
of
right,
Wisconsin?
so yeah, all right. Well, appeal to the state. I think when you there's a good side, there's an upside and downside to film incentives. When Canada offered their incentives, it was the dollar was half the price of the U.S. dollar, and then they had incentives on top of it. So productions in the 80s started flying over the border. And as they did, Canada said, well, that's great, but you can't bring all these Americans. You have to bring like 2 and a couple key people in your crew, and then the rest are Canadians in order to qualify. So the states that have adopted that do the same thing. Whereas in the 70s, I could go to Texas or come to Wisconsin. I was here making a dairy movie for 6 weeks in Shawano in the 70s or something. And you go to Texas or Colorado or wherever, and you could work. Well, now with incentives, there's a thing about local hire because they want to stimulate their own economy and they want to give their own people a base. And so you can, you have to have a local hire. So I can't work in Illinois like I would like to as a crew member because I need to prove residence in Illinois.
Which is good to do anyway, since they legalize weed.
Right, but the nomadic lifestyle is somewhat over, because casting something in North Carolina, but you have to be a North Carolina resident in order to get the part. So there's that downside. And with Wisconsin, we had incentives for a short period of time. And some people politically would like you to believe that they didn't work. Other people would like you to believe that they did work.
Well, I've read articles that people claim that Public Enemies killed it off because it gave enemies of the incentive a chance to show how it could be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I think like anything, it was politicized both by the politicians. We had a film office at the time that did not track any of the money. The Department of Commerce didn't track any of the money. The only people who tracked the money apparently was Universal. Universal said it was good for everybody, and the politicians who wanted to get rid of it, who was Doyle at the time,
right?
That administration said no, it wasn't good for it. And Film Wisconsin said, well, we don't know really if it was good for it or not. So we think it was.
Fuck wasn't going to do it.
Well, and Walker told me to my face in 2010 that he liked anything that created jobs. And film incentives were definitely something he would take up as soon as he was elected. And then when he got elected, he said, I'm not going to address this until 2013. And then
recalls.
And then 2013 came along and he said, Amron could do it. So, but the thing is that during that year of 2008, when there were incentives, there were only two movies that were incentivized. That was Public Enemies and a little movie that a friend of mine, Susan, produced called, at the time, Project Solitude. It's since been renamed. It stars Eric Roberts, and I can't think of the name.
Eric Roberts is the shit, by the way. Go on. He's amazing.
He is. He's I said something to him one time at Paramount, and he said, I do so many of these movies, I don't know which one I'm on now. And which is true. I mean, he's done like, 400 movies or something.
His career took a crazy turn.
Yeah. But at any rate, I did a movie. I'm going to completely segue. I'm at Paramount. We're there to see a movie called First Dog that Brian Stoller wrote and directed.
First Dog?
Yeah.
Is that about like the dog in the White House?
Yeah, Dog in the White House, right.
Oh, my God.
And a comedy, and it had a number of people in it. Now, Charlene Tilton and I made a movie together in
I love the title. First Dog, is it? Of course, it's what you think it is.
Exactly. You were right on the nail.
It's not like
Charlene Tilton and I made a movie together
back in 1980. You know, when I worked at the Egyptian, she worked at the Egyptian. We knew each other from the movie theater when I was an usher and she was an usherette.
Did you ever sleep with Charlene Tilton?
Did she ever become a cop?
I want to know the first answer.
No, and then she moved across the street to the Hollywood T-shirt company. But then, and one day I saw her walking up along the side of Paramount on Gower. She said, I think I just got a TV series or something. I said, yeah, okay, well, good luck. And the next thing is history. But we did this movie, and it was with Ray Walston and some other people. And but I hadn't seen, and I love Charlene. She was great. And I hadn't seen her in many, many years, and not on Facebook or anything. I think the last time I saw her, it was some animal rights thing or a Screen Actors protest or something. And I pull into Paramount to park, and I'm walking to the theater, and I see this person backing up, going forward, backing up, trying to get into the spot, backing up, going in. And I look, and I'm like, God, it's Charlene Tilton. I go, Tilton, learn how to drive. And she looks over at me. We haven't seen each other in 20 years.
She's like,
goes, oh, my God. It's like, don't tell me what to do. And anyway, that's an aside.
The two movies we got sidetracked off.
I got sidetracked.
Public Enemies and Project Solitude.
Project Solitude. Well, and so what happened was,
two movies that used incentives.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember. Oh, because Eric Roberts and the thing I segued into this other story with Charlene because it was a pronounced wonderful time for me to establish contact with somebody I'd known from years before. Anyway, during that year, the film incentives, the push for the film incentives was responsible for another 25 or 23, 27 projects in the state of Wisconsin, none of which had incentives. They were reality shows. They were narrative films. David Lynch's wife did her movie. His ex-wife at the time, Baraboo, I believe the name of it was. She came in and shot that. So there was a flurry of activity. 2009, Feed the Fish with Tony Shalhoub was shot up north in the same area that the Project Solitude was shot, and another movie called No God, No Master, directed by Terry Green. And they spent
I watched a set for that one night. I remember they had all those 1930s cars.
Oh, yeah.
I was like set security for that shit one night.
Yeah, it was, and so Terry came in and they retroactively pulled the rug out of it. The production started like on the 5th of July. They'd been doing pre-production the end of the calendar fiscal year is the 30th of June. So Doyle had passed the incentives to end on the 30th of June, but go back to January 1st. So it pulled the rug out of everything for No God, No Master, created quite
that sucks.
Oh, totally. Because now
he
he had to raise money that had been earmarked for his investors while shooting the movie and make sure that he could honor his commitments to his investors. So it was totally, totally bad. And then
he should have went no SAG, dude.
That's what I'm saying.
No, but then, well, they
retooled
everything. They got the movie done. They spent 3 months in the state of Wisconsin. In 2010, I'm in California. Terry calls and goes, "What's with this story in the Hill, which is the paper in Madison or whatever?" I go, "What?" He goes, "They wrote this story saying that I brought my production to Wisconsin because I could make Milwaukee look more like New York City than I could make Chicago look like New York City." And he goes, "I came to Wisconsin because of the film incentives. I came because it was an opportunity to make a movie and to do it. And you know, he didn't know he was going to get the rug pulled out from under him. So he eventually got some money from the state, like $180,000. He was owed like $1 million something, and he got like $185,000. And apparently, Feed the Fish got something. They were owed maybe $100,000. I don't know what they got. But they didn't get what they were supposed to have gotten. And Doyle was saying, "Hey, we've got this grant that you can have if you are a full-time filmmaker and you put people to work," which then turned out to not be the case either. So the bottom line is that nothing had been done. Now, some people are trying to reinterest. They haven't, I don't think, yet approached the state. And in order to do so, they need to be smart about it. The problem with the incentives was not the incentives. The problem with the incentives was that they weren't administered properly by the Department of Commerce or Film Wisconsin or anybody who would administer incentives. There were also other things.
Now, Public Enemies, though, unlike the narrative they had spun about No God, No Master, did come here specifically because Dillinger had been in these spots, right, in Wisconsin. They were using it was location specific, so they might have come here even without the incentives, theoretically.
Well,
right?
Perhaps. Like, for example, Transformers shot, I think in 2010 or 11, came in.
Yeah, I worked on that for a day.
And they were supposed to shoot 4 days. They shot 2 and they left. And then they came out with this paper saying, "See, we don't need the incentives because No God, No Master came for the to make Milwaukee look like Chicago. They didn't need the incentives. And Transformers came for the Calatrava. They didn't need the incentives." Well, I beg your pardon. And we got $1 million for that. Well, Chicago got like $190 million. And then they went to Michigan. They got another $100 million or $200 million there.
Shot a lot.
So Wisconsin got $1 million and everybody else got like $400 million because we don't need the incentives. So, there's...
It's very weird. It feels like a very conservative, anti-Hollywood kind of, like, we don't even want them coming here. You were never going to have
incentives with Walker because it's union. I mean, so this is going to be a right to work state. You're never going to have that. But I think that there's a way to sensibly create an inner and outer incentive, meaning you want to be able to and that's what the original incentives missed was it was heavily focused in attracting business because they wisely knew that there aren't a whole lot of filmmakers here who have worked on television or movies, and so they don't understand the speed and the
but the same could have been said for Georgia, which has reaped massive benefits
because they developed the business, right? And that's what they were hoping to do. But you can't say, okay, we'll give it a year. Georgia gave it now 10, 20 years. So you build.
Shout out to Dan Rosenfeld, Third Rail Studios. You build
in New Mexico and the other ones. You build a business by working. It's just like what I said about positive thinking. You have to do it long enough consistently in order to get the result. And the same thing with the incentives. So, but there's a way to if you're going to do a line item tax deduction or referral or deferral or whatever, there's a way to administer it to make sure that there aren't any abuses or alleged abuses or
right. It's like an ideological reason. It's why
you need bean counters to actually count beans, and make sure that the beans are being spent the way that they're claimed to being spent. I don't know that there were any abuses like Iowa said, well, the producers were buying cars for their wives or things like that. I mean, and so abuses could happen. But the goal of incentive, I mean, they incentivize the medical business here in Wisconsin constantly.
Right. They incentivized Foxconn.
Exactly. So, So I don't think there's anything wrong with having incentives. It's kind of like why a grocery store, and while it's not, an apple-to-apple comparison, there's no reason why a grocery store doesn't. They have discount coupons because they know that stimulates.
Now, those are more stable businesses, than these transient businesses that come and go with Hollywood. But what's wrong with that?
Well, the construction business is transient,
right.
Whether it's home building or freeway building or whatever. And the other thing is I oftentimes do that. I go, imagine, you helped rebuild 94, the interstate, and you could say, I worked on that. I helped build
like
that.
Me.
And that's going to
I saw Shia LaBeouf on the set of Transformers 3 one day.
There you go. But you could say I worked on that movie. I was a part of that. This is part of my history. You could get an IMDb credit and actually get a salary. That would be nice. Terry Green, one of the things that he was a huge champion about, and maybe to a fault, but he was a huge champion, is I pay my people, crew and cast, living wages. If they're going to work in a movie of mine, I want to make sure that they can feed themselves and their family while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. And he said,
I actually went to his house once. I had to go down there with Matt Ott before they started shooting with a rider truck and fill it up with a bunch of materials they had.
By the way, Michael, Terry's working third shift now.
Oh, yeah. Good.
He seemed like a nice dude. I think
he is a nice dude.
He unfriended me on Facebook because I cussed too much, I think.
Well, that may be. And he moved to Wisconsin.
Oh, is he here now?
I think he's out west somewhere. I don't know exactly where. We haven't talked in a few months, but he was getting ready to move.
All right.
When we were communicating. But the point being is that Wisconsin could come up with a way of promoting film and or television and or streaming and or the arts that makes sense monetarily, both to the creator, the distributor. Entertainment is a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar business,
especially with these TV shows and so many platforms now.
But when Wisconsin shut down the film incentives, there were billions of dollars hurtling past this state, and they were going to Michigan and Minnesota and to Chicago or to Illinois and to Iowa. And Wisconsin could have had a part of that, but they said, "Nah, we're not going to do that." And you want to help the state? Here's my
and turn down federal funds for fucking super trains and everything else.
Right. Well, and here's the deal: your tax dollar. Your taxes are going up, even if they try to lower your taxes. Your tax dollar is going up because the older people are dying and or moving to tax-less states like Nevada or Florida or Texas or something. Yeah. So as people leave, the people who stay here take up more of the tax burden. So it's not as though people are flocking to the state of Wisconsin, even though we have fish and we have hunting. And as I say, we have deer, cheese, and cannibalism, which are the three reasons why most people come to Wisconsin.
We've covered those.
Yeah. No, cannibalism.
Do you need to take off or you?
Yeah, I kind of do.
You can take off.
I'm going to take off.
He can finish without you.
You fellas have fun.
Right on.
So, you're saying goodbye. That is a perfect time to say that in leaving, the state can do something smart for the state and do something attractive and have more film and entertainment here and take part in the lion's share of everything that's going on. And they just haven't. And they need to be educated into how to do that.
Agreed. Well, with Tony Evers, that's how you say it? Evers, right? Evers, Evers, in Chance. With him in office, maybe there could be an appeal made there, but the thing is too, like how high on the ladder is it to them out of all the problems they have to solve?
Well, given
you come and make this appeal, but it's like if you can prove we can bring revenue into the state, it's a big fucking deal.
Well, there's a multiplier effect for every dollar you spend. If you bring a movie company in, they have to put people up in hotels, they have to have cars, they have to have, all other sundry of things that stimulates the local businesses and the local economies. Part of the I think the downside that they kept saying is, well, if Milwaukee's doing really well, it doesn't mean that lacrosse is. How do you distribute the tax dollar? And I don't have an answer to that.
Right.
Michael, I want to say it's great to see you, get to chat with you, talk with you, and we'll do this again. And you're looking good.
Great to see you, Rex.
Good.
Yeah, we will see you soon. Let's definitely.
Yeah, he's the shit.
He's got so many stories.
Come back anytime.
See you later.
Perfect.
All right,
man.
This has been great. I really have appreciated this. This is fun. And Michael and you are awesome. And so thank you for having me here.
Thanks, man. We can do this all day, anytime. You got anything to plug or anything?
Well, I I'm working on a few projects that are in different stages, so I'm not going to say anything about that. Shooting Star, I don't know when that's coming out. I'm thrilled about that. That was the experience I mentioned. That's really, really awesome, with Michael Pfeiffer directing, Peter Sherayko producing and acting, and with Michael Paré and the characters, the other actors that I mentioned before. It was originally, now I don't know what's happening. I don't know how what's changing, but originally it was going to be a feature film. Then as far as I know, it might be a television pilot. They were talking about turning it into a pilot. Well, or Netflix or something.
Did your character end up getting shot or not? Would you have a recurring role?
I shouldn't tell. I could possibly. Well, one of the characters in the movie said it's going to be a pilot. He went, "Oh, I'm screwed," because he gets killed. And Michael Paré kept wanting to shoot me throughout the entire thing, and the director saying, "You can't do that." That's not, Michael, yeah, but I wouldn't take this.
We need him for the series.
I wouldn't take him. Well, sadly, I was scripted to be in the very final scene of the show.
Oh, shit.
And they shot that before I arrived on set because they had whatever considerations. They had to change things around. So they shot it a day or two before I got there. So I was really disappointed because I was thrilled to be in the last scene. I didn't have anything to say, essentially background, but I was there with some other people. So if that tips anything, in the original script, I was alive at the end, but now you may not know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it to plug, or?
Yeah.
We should do one last plug for Todd Robinson's film.
Oh,
the
last full measure of Todd Robinson is a marvelous film. It's playing in theaters now. And you can find
amazing cast.
It is truly an amazing cast, and Todd is a wonderful guy, a wonderful director, wonderful writer.
Peter Fonda's last film role.
Yep, and it's about a true American hero. Now, I should mention another friend of mine, Rod Laurie, who has directed a number of really incredible movies, some of my favorites. Has a movie coming out called The Other, if I remember correctly. And it is also a war picture.
Nice.
And Rod is another marvelous man and a wonderful director. So those are movies you should absolutely watch for.
Did Rod make The Contender?
He did.
I love that movie.
He did.
Great movie.
Isn't that amazing? It's a great movie.
John Allen.
Yeah. He also did the one with James Gandolfini and Robert Redford.
Yeah.
In prison.
Yeah,
I can't.
Not The Fortress, the fucking something like that.
Yeah, and he did. I'll tell you, he did the. You can't call it a remake. So I'm not. He did. What
was that called?
No, I can't think of the movie.
We are getting old. I believe chemo. I had cancer.
But Dustin Hoffman, Susan George. Oh, come on.
Peckinpah's? Fucking.
It was Peckinpah's. I knew Sam. That's another story. But yeah, what was that?
Jesus Christ.
In this one, he's got Jim Woods and James Purcell and.
Edit this shit to remember. This
yes. Let's.
Straw Dogs, right?
Straw Dogs.
Jesus Christ.
So
didn't look that up, fuckers.
God Almighty. One of the highlights of my life was I got to get to know and Susan George, in the. Probably the early 80s. So that was cool. And she was in Straw Dogs. So what Rod did was it wasn't a remake of Straw Dogs. It was like a new version. And they went to New Orleans instead of the English, Scottish, Irish.
Yeah. But it was a remake essentially. But
it's the same story essentially, but different.
I didn't know he directed that.
And I said, I really liked what you did. Because of what you did, I didn't compare the two. I wasn't there going, oh, this guy's like that guy or this is like that. I looked at it when I watched it, and I was like, when I heard about it, I'm like, no, you can't make Straw Dogs. No.
It's almost like they just used it as a form of IP or something because it's just another home invasion type movie, but doesn't.
Well, no, but I mean, it's Straw Dogs, but it's not Straw Dogs. You have to see it to know what I'm thinking about with it. Yeah, what I'm saying is sometimes if somebody reboots something, you're making a comparison between the two. It's like, was the original better or worse or this? I didn't have that. I didn't find it necessary to go there with this. It was like I'm watching the same story, but I'm watching it by a different filmmaker do it in a different way. So I wasn't going, oh, well, this isn't like the other one.
Cool.
I thought it was really, really wonderfully done the way he dealt with it. And Jimmy Woods is fantastic in that. He's over the top. I mean, not in a bad way. I mean, he's a very volatile character, which he plays well at, and good movie, you know.
Fuck yeah.
So, but right now, while you can go see The Last Full Measure.
Definitely. I don't know how much longer it'll be in theaters because good movies tend to come and go a lot quicker than.
Well, not only that, they're up against the tent poles. They're up against
exactly.
the Marvel movies and everything. And so I mean, if anybody gets a week nowadays, they're lucky.
Exactly.
And if they can get more than that, that's even better. It was funny because I went to see 1917, and we were at the Majestic, and I went to the restroom, came back, told my friend John, and I said, "Oh, a friend of mine's got a movie that's going to be playing here next week. It's coming." I said, "The Last Full Measure." He goes, "I just watched the trailer." I was like, "Oh, so cool!" I didn't get.
I know. With our manager being along for the ride, like the whole 20 years, pretty much. My brother and I have just been asking for years, "What's up with The Last Full Measure? Where's it at?" And I remember just Bruce Willis was attached at one point, and this and that, and the cast is come and gone. You know, it's just very interesting to see behind the scenes of the actual ordeal of this movie coming close so many times, and finally they got it fucking made, which is amazing because it's a super, super important story that should be told.
Oh yeah, no, it's truly amazing.
All right, with that, we'll catch up with Rex next time.
Hasta la vista.
Thanks for listening.
Oh, thank you.
Click on.